Chapter 21, The Leftover Neighbor, Hanruoro's Hidden Little Hobby. The night passed quickly. In the distance, the sky had already begun to pale, the first faint fingers of dawn not yet full. Everything was waking, preparing to greet a new morning. A thin mist rose from the stream through the trees, and Sea God Lake lay shrouded in a soft, mysterious vapor. Shu Yan came down the stairs and immediately saw steaming buns and porridge on the table. Hanruoro sat on the sofa as if she owned the place. He could only laugh softly. "Ayan, good morning." She smiled and jingled a bright key in her hand. "I forgot to tell you, so you don't misplace your key. I, your elder sister, kept a spare to your house. You won't blame me, will you?" "It's fine. Ruoro-jie can come by whenever she wants." Shu Yan chuckled, shook his head, and after a short chat with Hanruoro, sat at the table and bit into a bun. It was soft and fragrant, simple and very good. Hanruoro watched him with a gentle smile until he finished. Then she handed him a tissue. "Let's go meet the neighbor first. After that, we'll explore the inner courtyard so you can get familiar with the place." Shu Yan wiped his mouth and nodded. When he'd arrived last night, he'd noticed only 3 buildings within a kilometer or 2 were habitable. The third house had been dark all evening. Stepping outside, the air felt crisp and fresh, though the early morning damp made everything a little chilly. Hanruoro led him to the third door, knocked gently, and footsteps hurried inside. The door swung open to reveal a young woman in a red camisole nightgown, still clearly half asleep. She looked to be in her early 20s, fair-skinned and pretty, with a certain heroic bearing in her brows that made her striking in a different way from Hanruoro. Hanruoro gave a helpless little smile and stepped slightly to block Shu Yan's view, tapping the woman on the forehead. "Minger, if you don't come in, you're going to be seen like this." Wu Ming rubbed her eyes. In the clear, chilly morning light, she instantly registered Shu Yan standing behind Hanruoro. "Ah!" she cried, and the door slammed shut so hard the frame complained. Hanruoro shook her head amusedly, then turned back to Shu Yan. "This is Wu Ming," she said. "Her spirit is a top-tier fire attribute beast spirit, the Golden Crow. She's about to break into the Spirit Saint realm, so in terms of strength and talent, she's one of the inner courtyard's best." Hanruoro glanced at the firmly closed door, then leaned close to Shu Yan and whispered, "Minger's great in many ways, but she's impatient. She's a fire spirit master, hot-tempered and impulsive, so she often gets into conflicts. She doesn't always know her own limits, and a lot of people in the inner courtyard are a little wary of her." "But Ayan," she continued, "you've got good social skills. Minger's words can be blunt and unpleasant, but rarely mean. Be understanding and don't pick fights, and I think you two will get on fine." Shu Yan nodded, inhaling the familiar sweet scent that always seemed to surround Hanruoro. They waited around 10 minutes before the door opened again. The woman in red now stood in the doorway fully awake, radiating lively energy and looking nothing like the sleepy figure from moments before. Seeing her stare at him, Shu Yan stepped forward and greeted her politely. "Hello, senior sister Wu Ming. I'm Shu Yan. I just enrolled in the inner courtyard yesterday." Wu Ming frowned, as if something had clicked into place. Then, slapping a hand to her thigh, she brightened. "So you're Shu Yan. Of course, I remember now. Ruoro-jie used to talk about you all the time. She'd stare at your pictures for ages. When I teased her, she got embarrassed and refused to admit she wanted to raise you. She even made me promise not to tell anyone." Shu Yan froze, and Hanruoro's face went blank for a long second, as if she'd been struck. Having an awkward, private admission exposed in front of her own younger brother was mortifying. The gentle air around Hanruoro vanished, and for a beat, she looked as if black smoke were rising off her. "Minger," she said ice-cold, each word measured, "if you want to die, you can just say so." Wu Ming immediately wished she could take the words back. Seeing Hanruoro's expression turn from amusement to near explosion, her face went white. She stepped forward, grabbed Hanruoro's arm, and began to laugh nervously. "Ruoro-jie, I slipped up. Please don't take it to heart. If it's that bad, I'll come kneel by your bed tonight until you calm down. Please, Ruoro-jie, don't be angry. I didn't mean it." "Huh? Minger, why are you calling me esteemed elder all of a sudden? Am I that old?" Hanruoro snapped. The repeated, exaggerated honorifics pricked a sore spot, like someone blaring a reminder that she wasn't young anymore. As a woman standing beside the man she cared about, being casually labeled as old and unfit for him was intolerable. No, 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 Ruo Roje. No, esteemed elder, I didn't mean it. I know I was wrong. Please forgive me. This will absolutely be the last time. Wu Ming's face was suddenly all sincerity and panic, almost in tears. She knew, better than anyone, how terrifying Han Ruruo could be when angered. The title, Inner Courtyard's #1 controller, wasn't for show. Even she, the Golden Crow, didn't dare cross certain lines. She told herself she'd just woken up and her brain hadn't quite kicked in. Nothing to do with intelligence. And watching Shu Yan step in at that moment to help her escape the awkwardness, she thought, only half jokingly, that if there were a favorability system in play, it would have gone. Wu Ming's favorability, +1, +1, +1. The three of them walked down the shaded path, the morning mist closing in behind them and hiding their footprints. Soon enough, when the sun fully rose, the thin, damp air would be swept away and everything would be clear again. Chapter 22, Getting Along, Shu Yan's Epiphany, and a Dohun clash in the inner courtyard. For the whole day, Shu Yan shadowed Han Ruoro and Wu Ming, exploring most of the inner courtyard. He committed the layout to memory. Important facilities, the Dohun district, the inner courtyard library, places he would surely visit often. He decided he would go to the Dohun district alone and go to the library with Han Ruoro. As evening fell, the three returned together. Wu Ming rubbed her rumbling stomach, having completely forgotten the lesson from that morning, and immediately dragged the others to the inner courtyard cafeteria to satisfy her appetite. After a day of company, Shu Yan had a basic impression of Wu Ming. Impulsive, blunt, quick-tempered, and a little silly, she was nonetheless a genuine friend. She'd liked Shu Yan at first sight and chattered nonstop as they wandered. From Han Ruoro's quiet words, Shu Yan also picked up a few essentials about her background and status. Useful, if sparse, information. The inner courtyard cafeteria was far more lavish than the outer courtyards. Rare ingredients seemed to appear without effort. Rich aromas hung in the air and made mouths water. The three ordered a number of dishes, found a table, and sat. Wu Ming and Han sat together. Shu Yan faced them. While reaching over to pilfer a piece of century-aged beef from Han Ruoro's plate, Wu Ming grinned at Shu Yan and said, "Shu Yan, honestly, I still can't believe you're only 11. You don't know, word got around after you beat those 5 outer courtyard 6th grade geniuses yesterday. Now everyone knows there's a genius like you here. Heh, be ready, your free time's about to disappear." Shu Yan put down his chopsticks, shrugged, and said mildly, "Let 'em come. Stronger opponents are good. There's nothing to worry about." "That's the spirit." Wu Ming slapped the table exuberantly. "But you have to spar with me tomorrow. Your senior sister expects it. If you break your promise, I'll be angry." Her loud excitement startled Han Ruoro, who was sipping soup. She coughed and splashed a little into her crimson uniform. Wu Ming, buoyed by finding a kindred spirit, didn't notice. Before she could go on about Dohun matters, Han Ruoro's cool hand found the back of her neck and pinched gently, immediately dampening her enthusiasm. Wu Ming went quiet, then saw the low expression on Han Ruoro's face. "Minger, you're being very bold today. Have you taken a dislike to me, or are you actually planning to challenge me again?" Han Ruoro's voice was soft, but carried the domineering weight of the inner courtyard's second-ranked. Wu Ming's grin evaporated. She feared Han would pull her off for a match if she crossed the line. After a moment, Han sighed and released her grip. "Minger, I'm not scolding you, but try to be sensible sometimes. Don't be so impulsive. I'll help educate you, on behalf of your aunt and uncle. You know my methods." Han's words were gentle but firm. "Also, Shu Yan will be busy the next few days. As his senior sister, don't waste his time. You two can spar when he's free. If you're bored, come find me." Wu Ming nodded profusely, but had no real intention of trying to beat Han Ruoro. She wasn't delusional. She was a spirit emperor, and Han Ruoro was an almost perfect spirit saint. She'd challenged Han before and never won. Still, she would never say aloud that she kept losing. Pride and competitiveness ran deep. After dinner, the three returned to the dormitory. Perhaps because Wu Ming had revealed too much of her dark past, Han Ruoro felt slightly awkward alone with Shu Yan, and merely offered a greeting before returning to her own room. Before closing his door, Wu Ming reminded Shu Yan again to be ready for the onslaught of challenges the next day. Then she blinked, her eyes flashed with a strange golden-red hue, and mouthed something to Shu Yan before shutting her door. Shu Yan was puzzled. What had she meant about Han Ruoruo preferring him in his younger, almost childlike look? What kind of strange taste was that? He and Han had been together for years. He'd never guessed she had that kind of preference. He sat on the sofa, stared at the fresh flowers on the table, and tried to think it through. Nothing came. Then a sudden flicker of insight hit him. His pupils shrank. For reasons he couldn't fully explain, a sliver of belief in Wu Ming's words took root. As they'd warned, Shu Yan's schedule filled up over the next few days. Countless battle-hungry inner courtyard students came to challenge him, and he accepted nearly all of them. He spent half of each day in the Dohun Arena. The opponents he met here were a world away from those in the Douling Underground Arena. Even within the same rank, genius spirit masters and ordinary spirit masters could differ wildly in combat ability. Each fight, the bleeding, the injury, the victory, stoked Shu Yan's excitement. His blood boiled. His battle instincts flared, and he threw himself into combat with single-minded passion. 2 days later, in the Dohun district, 2 distinct dragon roars thundered over the arena. Streaks of black and yellow light met in a collision too fast for the eye to follow. Rocks exploded into spikes, the ground heaved, and the spectator stands trembled with the shock. People gasped. Good heavens, are these 2 really only spirit ancestors and spirit kings? From the looks of this, you'd think it's 2 spirit saints, a handsome inner courtyard student murmured in awe. As a food system spirit master, he relied on battle spirit masters and rarely saw such raw one-on-one combat. 2 lunatics clashing, his companion said, watching the dust fall from the dome. Lucky or unlucky for the arena, I don't know, but Mu Jingyan is probably going to lose to this newcomer. Speaking of the newcomer, he's brutal. In the past few days, almost all inner courtyard students below Spirit Emperor have been defeated by him, and he's still undefeated. I don't even know where the academy found such a freak. As whispers spread, a yellowish-brown column of light suddenly shot into the sky. In the swirling sand, a colossal dragon, encased in thick yellow-brown armor, roared upward. The roar became shockwaves that rolled outward. Time itself seemed to slow, the linger pressure of the attack forcing Shu Yan, who had been advancing, to stop and watch from a distance. The massive ridge along the dragon's back glinted dully in the gaslight. By its sheer presence and power, it was clearly an extraordinarily mighty giant dragon, one of the strongest among the sub-dragon ranks. Chapter 23, Space-Time Shatter and Time Douluo. A fierce wind carried sand and stone, charged with dense earth attribute energy until it seemed almost tangible. Its force far exceeded what a 56th rank Spirit King's 5th spirit ability should produce. In truth, Mu Jingyan's strike was more complex than simply Tornado Sandstorm. He had fused it with the Spirit Bone ability Wrath of the Earth from his right leg's Spirit Bone. 2 10,000-year abilities from the same spirit beast overlapped, producing power beyond what an ordinary Spirit Emperor's 6th-level skill could match. Facing Mu Jingyan's full-force decisive strike, Shu Yan no longer held back. 4 spirit rings rose around him, the 4th, also a 10,000-year ring, flaring with a heart-stopping black light. Wherever that light touched, movement seemed to be forced to a halt, everything growing unnaturally rigid. Even the roaring sand tornado appeared to freeze mid-rotation. The void realm trembled. Space, rigidified, began to split like a mirror cracking. Tiny fissures multiplied and spread, and dark, abyssal holes appeared where light was swallowed whole. An overwhelming suction burst outward, affecting the entire Dohun district and making everyone there stagger. This was Yazi's 10,000-year 4th spirit ability, Space-Time Shatter. As the name implied, the strike inherited the Thorn Dragon's innate space shatter and added the ability to suspend spatial operation in a given area. It was Shu Yan's most devastating area effect spirit ability yet. The on-site referee watched, stunned. Referees in the inner courtyard's Dohun district are assigned according to the combatant's strength. For a student below Spirit Emperor like Shu Yan, the highest-ranked referee would normally be a Spirit Saint. But this clash had already exceeded anything a Spirit Saint should handle. Intervening now carried a great risk, Even survival was uncertain. Yet if he did nothing and something fatal happened to the inner courtyard students, his position at Shrek Academy would be forfeit. He was trapped between duty and self-preservation. The Void Realm's fractures kept expanding and the suction intensified. In moments, the sandstorm was completely swallowed. The surrounding ground began to crumble and vanish, moving terrifyingly toward the spectators' stands. Panic spread across every face. The scent of death was hot and real. No one needed to be told to flee. If they didn't escape, survival was unlikely. Shu Yan's face was grave. The widening fissures were severing his link to his spirit ability. He had fought 2 Spirit Kings back to back. His spirit power and the spatial energy stored in his body were nearly exhausted. He had little left to reestablish control of the ability. Then, quietly, the situation turned. Just as the Void Realm had begun devouring the spectator stands, a brilliant silver light shot out from the ruptured space. Shu Yan's pupils tightened. The silver light carried an immense spatial power, and beneath that power there was something else, elusive and unusual. The light blossomed into a massive barrier, enveloping the shattered Void Realm and isolating the destruction and suction. Students at the edges who were still struggling could escape. Shu Yan took the chance to retreat. With the silver power's intervention, the fissures stilled and streaks of silver light lanced through the air. The dark abyssal holes healed slowly, space knitting itself back together. The suction dwindled until everything returned to normal. From beginning to end, the owner of that power repaired the massive breach in less than half a minute, and with no apparent strain, as if it were effortless. The silver barrier vanished. 2 streaks of light, one gold, one red, rushed from the stands and resolved into Han Roro and Wu Ming. They seized Shu Yan's arms. Han's face was anxious. "Yan, are you all right?" she asked. Shu Yan shook his head gently to tell them to stay calm. After a moment, he said softly, "I'm fine. I did drain quite a bit of spirit power, but don't worry, I won't be trapped by my own ability." Han's racing heart finally eased. Wu Ming exhaled loudly, then smacked Shu Yan's shoulder with lingering fright. "You've got such a terrifying ability. For a moment I thought a fixed-position soul guiding device had exploded in the Dohun district. That feeling was lethal." Shu Yan ignored her scolding. He looked up, and his gaze landed on the far side of the stands. There stood a tall, burly, middle-aged man watching him. Shu Yan's expression was unreadable. He slipped his hand free from Han's and said quietly, "That senior just now helped me. I need to go thank him." Before either of them could react, a silver flash surrounded Shu Yan, and the remaining spatial power surged, teleporting him away. Han's hand met empty air. Wu Ming was the first to recover. She slapped her forehead in delight and grabbed Han as they took off after him. "Look at that. We almost forgot Shrek still has seniors like that," she said. "Maybe this commotion isn't all bad for Shu Yan." Han said little. The disaster had been huge and could have had dire consequences. After a moment to assess, she allowed herself a small, cautious relief. Shu Yan landed opposite the burly man. Mu Jingyan leaned against him, blood staining his body, especially the right shoulder, where flesh had been torn away. Despite his injuries, Mu Jingyan no longer looked at Shu Yan with hatred. Instead, his eyes shone with admiration and fierce battle intent. He forced himself upright, bowed respectfully to the burly man, then turned to Shu Yan. "Brother Shu," he said, voice raw, "I lost. I've not felt so near death in a long time. This fight gave me insight and challenges for my cultivation. Within a year, I will break through to Spirit Emperor. When that happens, I want another battle. No outside interference, only combat. If I die, then my skill was inferior, and I will have no regrets." He cupped his fist to Shu Yan with firm sincerity. "Brother Mu, be ready, always." Shu Yan bowed in return. In his eyes, Mu Jingyan was a pure warrior, someone who sought strong opponents and treated combat as belief. He respected the man. Mu Jingyan smiled and limped away. His wounds were serious and required urgent treatment, unlike Shu Yan's merely depleted spirit power. Shu Yan turned to the middle-aged man and bowed. "Thank you for your help, senior. I would have been in serious trouble without you." The man smiled, not with blame, but with an approving, almost moved expression. After a pause, he spoke gently but with weight. "Your spirit ability is very special and powerful, but your control over spatial power is not yet precise enough to limit its scope reliably. Spatial power is mysterious. Beyond what you know, there are countless secrets. You still have much to learn." He paused, then continued in a firmer tone. "Fortunately, no one was killed today. Let this be settled. The damaged competition stage will be repaired by specialists, but repairs to other areas must be paid for by those responsible. That is Academy rule. I hope you will abide by it. And one more thing, space is the hardest attribute to master. In future, when using this spirit ability, assess the risks carefully. Do not endanger innocent people. Remember that." Shu Yan felt the pressure in the man's voice. Then the man's face softened and his tone warmed, almost comforting. "To be honest, after today I am very interested in you. When I was your age, I couldn't compare to your spatial control. If you have time, come to the Sea God Pavilion. I would be happy to teach and guide you." He inclined his head. "My name is Shi Xing, Team Douluo Shi Xing." As Shi Xing finished speaking, he rose and left the Dohun district without lingering. The commotion that Shu Yan and the two girls had caused had drawn the attention of many inner courtyard powerhouses. Shi Xing had happened to be passing by, sensed the disturbance, and stepped in to settle things. During their exchange, he had recognized Shu Yan, and now he would have to report the incident and his findings to the Sea God Pavilion. He couldn't help feeling a little envious of his old classmate Shu Junyu. Having such a genius son must be a great joy. After Shi Xing left, Shu Yan stood where he was, turning over the man's words in his mind. He truly hadn't expected his fourth spirit ability to be so terrifying. Perhaps, as Shi Xing had said, the nature of space is different from other attributes. It permeates everything. Its essence is strange and domineering, and the destruction it can unleash can't be judged by ordinary standards. The space-time shatter Shu Yan had just displayed, for example, any ordinary spirit emperor caught in it would hardly escape unscathed. At best, they might survive, but only barely. At worst, instant death. Still, Shu Yan had some insight. He could sense that the ability's true power had not been fully unleashed. His control and mastery of spatial power weren't yet sufficient to reach that higher level, exactly as Shi Xing had said. Beneath the surface understanding lay countless mysteries related to space. He had a great deal left to learn. Shu Yan's thoughts whirled until the two girls behind him called softly. He turned back to see Hanruo watching him. She glanced in the direction Shi Xing had gone, and then said softly, "Senior Shi Xing used to be a famous genius in the inner courtyard. His spirit is the space-time silver plate. He's involved with both space and time, the two most powerful attributes. He's called the Time Mage." Wu Ming added with feeling, "Yes, though Senior Shi Xing isn't old, he's already a titled Douluo. When we first entered the inner courtyard, there were many legends about him." She smiled ruefully. But in recent years, with senior sister Ruo and so many new geniuses rising, those legends have been spoken of less and less. Shu Yan stared toward the path. Shi Xing had taken for a moment, then whispered a few words to the two girls. They waited a bit until a Dohun district attendant came over to tell them the repair costs. After paying the fee, a spirit Douluo scolded Shu Yan briefly and released them without further punishment. Outside the Dohun district, the two girls accompanied Shu Yan to the Sea God Lake to recover some spirit power, and then the three of them headed for the cafeteria, intending to smooth over the day's events with a big meal. Just as they neared the cafeteria entrance, a soft, peaceful voice came from behind them. "Ruo Ming'er." Hanruo and Wu Ming were startled, turned, and brightened when they saw who it was. Shu Yan followed their gaze and recognized the speaker at once. On the small path to the cafeteria stood a young woman in her early 20s, smiling gently. Her features were flawless. Black hair flowed to her waist, and her dark eyes radiated a calm, gentle warmth that made her unforgettable. "Le Xuan, senior sister." Hanruo and Wu Ming spoke in unison and hurried over. Shu Yan also stepped forward a few paces. The young woman was Zhang Lexuan, senior sister of the Shrek Academy inner courtyard. Her gaze met Shu Yan's with a lively brightness that made him feel, oddly, as if she could see through his thoughts. "Senior sister, hello, I'm Shu Yan. I'm a new student. I only joined the inner courtyard a few days ago," he said with a smile. Zhang Lexuan nodded gently. "I was recuperating from injuries and had to go into seclusion for a spirit power breakthrough. I've been away these past few days. That was my oversight. As senior sister of the inner courtyard, it was her duty to care for and guide every newcomer, and she had already heard of Shu Yan's identity and extraordinary nature, so she treated him kindly. Shu Yan laughed softly. It's all right. With Ro Ro and senior sister Wu Ming showing me around, I'm already settling in. You should focus on recuperating. Zhang Lexuan's expression softened into a smile. You're heading to the cafeteria? Come with me. We can eat and talk. Han Ruoro and Wu Ming each linked an arm through hers, one on either side, and led the way, Shu Yan following behind. Their group drew attention as they entered. A mixed company of one boy and 3 leading girls of the inner courtyard was a rare sight. Even the woman serving food couldn't help but ask questions. Shu Yan felt awkward. He knew a few boys here, but after beating them, he'd become something of a pariah. Rumors calling him madman had spread, and after today, he suspected most ordinary students would avoid him. He rubbed his forehead and sighed inwardly. At their table, Shu Yan sat with Han Ruoro, while Zhang Lexuan and Wu Ming faced them. Wu Ming chatted animatedly, recounting recent events and the commotion Shu Yan had caused. Zhang Lexuan listened with visible surprise. After piecing everything together, she smiled and teased. It seems our junior brother is not only an unparalleled genius in cultivation, but he's already made some progress in relationships. Her tone was playful. Compared to the havoc in the Douluo district, she seemed more interested in her friend's romantic life. Han Ruoro flushed and lowered her head, while Shu Yan chuckled and made no denial. Their feelings were obvious to anyone paying attention. The space between them felt charged with that forbidden, ambiguous closeness that treads the line between siblings and lovers. After a day of hard cultivation, the comfort of that closeness was especially welcome. They were still in a transitional stage, but the direction was clear. That's a bit presumptuous, Shu Yan said with a wry smile. I'm still young. Isn't it too early to say such things? Zhang Lexuan only smiled and looked between Han Ruoro and Shu Yan. 11 years old isn't young for a spirit master. Your physical and mental development far outpace ordinary children. One senior once said, you can't judge a spirit master's age by normal standards. An 11-year-old spirit master might be comparable to a 15 or 16-year-old ordinary person in maturity. She glanced at them conspiratorially. So even if you and Ruoro... Enough! Stop it, both of you. Han Ruoro snapped, her face crimson, even her earlobes flushed. Despite being technically an adult, she was still easily embarrassed. Zhang Lexuan and Wu Ming exchanged amused smiles, clearly not losing interest in the subject. Chapter 25. Life in the Inner Courtyard and Han Ruoro's Sense of Crisis. After the battle in the Douluo district, Shu Yan's reputation shot up again. For a while, he became the center of attention in both the inner and outer courtyards. In the days that followed, inner courtyard students would still invite him to spar from time to time, but they always made it clear beforehand that the matches were friendly. No one wanted to risk a real fight. Shu Yan found those bouts a little dull, but he never refused. Even if a match didn't produce a close friendship, it at least created a courteous acquaintance. Connections were an essential asset for any strong spirit master, and this kind of nodding acquaintance relationship was a common social custom among inner courtyard students. The talent here was obvious, and most students had powerful backers. So even if they didn't intend to become close friends, everyone maintained these polite ties, which served as a kind of social lubricant and the potential foundation for deeper bonds later on. The pace of life in the inner courtyard wasn't frantic, but it wasn't slow either. Once Shu Yan adapted, his days settled into a comfortable routine. Most mornings he was woken by either Han Ruoro or Wu Ming, and they'd take breakfast together. Afterward, while the spiritual qi in the air was thickest, the 3 of them would cultivate in their respective simulated training grounds. At noon, they ate in the cafeteria, sometimes running into senior sister Zhang Lexuan from the inner courtyard. Shu Yan gradually learned more about her through these chance meetings. Afternoons were lazier. The 3 would either meditate at home or head to the Douluo district to demonstrate their abilities, putting down those inner courtyard students looking for trouble. After training, they liked to gather by the little stream while the air was still cool, enjoy the breeze, and chat to relax before dinner. Better to be in the best state, mentally and physically, for the evening meal. Living like this for too long could become monotonous, though. Sometimes Shu Yan and Han Roro would switch things up, skipping meditation or dohun sessions and going to the inner courtyard library to study and build their theoretical knowledge. Impetuous Wu Ming never wanted to go to the library, which suited the pair fine. It gave them more alone time. In that lazy, intimate afternoon atmosphere, Shu Yan and Han Roro grew very comfortable together. Their feelings deepened little by little, and they both felt it. Time slipped by like water. In a month, Shu Yan's progress proved the value of competing with gifted peers. His spirit power broke through another level, rising from 44 to 45. That evening at dinner, Wu Ming stared at him with something like resentment. Shu Yan felt awkward under that gaze and asked softly, "Senior sister, we have no grudges. Why are you looking at me like that?" Wu Ming kept silent for a long moment, then finally said, "Shu Yan, you're simply not human." Her blunt comment froze him. A huge question mark hovered above his head. Hey, no fair insulting a friend out of the blue. Wu Ming didn't think she'd said anything wrong and continued to glare. Han Roro smiled and explained, "Minger thinks your breakthroughs are too fast. When Minger and I were at the spirit ancestor realm, we could cultivate for 2 or 3 months without necessarily breaking through. But Ayan, when you cultivate, it's like you have no bottleneck. The breakthroughs just come naturally." "You're only 11 years old and already at level 45, she added. "That's higher than nearly 99% of 6th grade students in the outer courtyard. At this rate, you could become a spirit king at 12, and that would smash the inner courtyard's youngest record." Wu Ming snorted with a mix of envy and something else in her golden red eyes. She grabbed a chicken leg off Han Roro's plate, munched, and said, "To be honest, it probably won't take 10 years for you to break the record set by that senior sister who became the youngest spirit Douluo in almost 3,000 years. By then, you little rascal, you'll be the inner courtyard's senior brother." She brightened at the thought and teased Shu Yan with a wicked smile. "Who knows how many junior sisters in the academy will fall for you? Our junior brother Shu Yan is that handsome. Not only could he charm Ruo Ruo Jie, who used to show no interest in men and always kept so proper, even I, an elder sister, want to pinch his cheeks a few times." Shu Yan took it as typical banter from Wu Ming and didn't react. Unexpectedly, Han Ruo, who was usually the most annoyed by those jokes, didn't scold her this time. Instead, she fell silent and went deep in thought. Of course, Shu Yan was extraordinary, already a spirit ancestor at 11, and undeniably handsome, the sort of face that would attract attention in the inner courtyard. Han Roro had only been focused on enjoying being with him and had overlooked that prospect. Now the realization sank in and a subtle sense of crisis stirred in her, as if she were facing an unseen rival. Shu Yan glanced at Han Roro, head bowed in thought, and then at Wu Ming, still grinning. He didn't think much of it, only felt amused and a little touched. The contrast between Han Roro's gentle steadiness and Wu Ming's impetuousness made their friendship work in its own way. Perhaps they truly complemented each other. Dinner was pleasant. On the way back to their residence, the three walked toward the lakeside in the evening breeze, none of them speaking much. Although they sometimes disagreed about other things, their post-dinner routine was always the same, a stroll after the meal. The afterglow of the sunset filtered through the trees, leaves whispered in the breeze, and everything looked romantic and serene. They passed other students heading to or from the cafeteria. Acquaintances greeted one another with a few words, while strangers merely nodded and went their own way. They reached the fork in the road and took the small path towards Sea God Lake. As they stepped onto the trail, ready to admire the blood-red sky, they noticed someone quietly approaching not far ahead, another figure moving toward them under the sunset. Chapter 26, Ghost Girl. Ling Luochen, Wu Ming, and the extreme Yang Heartfire. Dusk was falling along the path by Sea God Lake. The lake's clear water slapped softly against the rocks, sending up a fine spray. Ripples caught the sinking sun and scattered it in bright, trembling fragments. A few green leaves drifted down from the old trees rooted at the shore, kissing the water's surface and then floating away with the current into the dimming distance. It was the kind of scene that seized the heart. No wonder Han Ruoro had once told them she loved the inner courtyard at sunset most of all. Han Ruoro's gaze sharpened as if she had sensed something. She turned to look into the shadows not far off. Shu Yan and Wu Ming followed her line of sight. The light was already weak. The trees around Sea God Lake threw everything but the small patch where the three of them stood into shadow. From that darkness came a soft sound of footsteps, and a cool, distant figure stepped out. Even Shu Yan, who had seen many beautiful women, felt a rare kind of arresting presence. Not exactly the stirring of love at first sight, but a composed, plum-blossom pride that left a deep impression. The woman was Ling Luochen, the Ice Princess. Her spirit was the rare ice element. She was the generation's main control-type spirit master among the Shrek 7 devils. Wu Ming glanced at her with obvious dislike, then looked away. Shu Yan only gave her a casual once-over before his eyes returned to Han Ruoro. Ling Luochen recognized Han Ruoro and Wu Ming and knew of Shu Yan. She had even watched one of his fights and been struck by the strength and indomitable quality he'd shown. She had already mentally set him up as a rival. When she stepped into view, her eyes flicked across Shu Yan with cool approval and a single inward thought: defeat him. Shu Yan had no idea he had been quietly ranked as a potential opponent in her mind. Ling Luochen's expression remained aloof as she gave a small, frosty nod. "Senior Sister Han, I'll be going," she said without waiting for an answer, then moved off into the shadows with light, almost weightless steps. Shu Yan watched her go. There was something about the way she walked, a gliding feather-light motion combined with skin so pale it almost reflected the dim light, that struck him oddly. For a moment he thought, half amused, half serious, that she looked like a ghost girl from some old horror film he'd seen in another life. If Ling Luochen had heard that comparison, she might have been furious. Appearance mattered to her, perhaps more than to most, and to be compared to a ghost would have been an insult worth settling with swords. But she didn't hear it. She was already gone into the dark. When Ling Luochen's silhouette vanished, Wu Ming snorted and let out a breath. "She's still so unapproachable," Wu Ming said. "I'll never understand what the boys who chase her are thinking, running after an ice block every day. Aren't they afraid of freezing to death?" "Pot calling the kettle black," Han Ruoro teased, turning on her. "Minger, you're even worse. At least she has people chasing her." Wu Ming bristled. Han Ruoro's words hit a sore spot. The fiery-tempered Wu Ming had few suitors at all, and spiteful classmates had dubbed her the Golden Crow Leftover Woman, lumping her together with the notorious fire demon Ma Xiao Tao as the two active volcanoes of the inner courtyard. It wasn't hard to imagine why Wu Ming's face hardened. Shu Yan watched the exchange with a little sympathy. In private, Wu Ming could be surprisingly gentle. Her hot temper simply made most people keep their distance. After some light teasing, Han Ruoro reached out and smoothed Wu Ming's hair with an affectionate, exasperated smile. "Minger, you really need to calm down," she said softly. "You can't be so easily provoked all the time. As a young woman, learn to be more rational. You're not a child anymore. You cause everyone so much worry." Wu Ming's cheeks puffed in irritation, but she dropped her shoulders and spoke quieter, more resigned. "I don't want to be like this," she admitted, "but sometimes I can't help it. There's more to it than temperament," she went on. "The Golden Crow's spirit is very yang, uncompromising. My spirit's extreme yang qi built up in my body until it sparked, heart fire. No matter how hard I try to suppress it, until that heart fire dissipates, it affects me. I get restless, quick to anger. I'm embarrassed by it. But after a while, I just stopped caring what people called me." Han Ruoro sighed and patted her gently. Shu Yan, whose life had so far been less tampered with by spirit-altered moods, thought for a moment before offering a practical suggestion. "Your spirit affecting your temperament happens to all spirit masters," he said. "In theory, it's reversible. There are methods to clear or weaken heart fire. If you can find the right technique or aid, you should be able to ease it." Wu Ming blinked at him, sadness and frustration mingling in her eyes. "We tried that," she said. "I thought fighting helped at first, venting through combat. But as I got stronger, that stopped working. I sought out Ling Luochen. Among the students, only her ice attribute might counter my fire. I asked her for a stream of extreme cold spirit power. It didn't require touch, just a transfer of spirit energy. But she refused, using the same excuse she'd given Ma Xiaotao before, something about cleanliness and not wanting contact. Wu Ming's voice boiled over into a huff. I don't get it. I wasn't asking for anything dangerous, just a little cold to help me dissipate the heart fire. She just doesn't like me. Humph. Han Roro's face softened with a knowing look. After that, Minger and junior sister Luochen never really got along. Some people even used that to say junior sister Luochen looked down on female classmates and fire attribute spirit masters. Eventually, junior sister Luochen went and taught that person a lesson herself. Shu Yan let out a humorless little laugh, a small inner courtyard, and yet it's a whole world of gossip. The lakeside grew quieter, shadow deepened. In a place with only a few dozen students, it seemed the smallest incidents could swell into legends overnight. Half-truths and hot feelings, rivalries dressed up as slights, and spirits and souls bent into unexpected shapes by pride and power. Chapter 27, The Dragon Crystal, the Auction, and Enlightenment. The evening breeze cooled as night fell. After what had happened earlier, Wu Ming's mood was dampened. She wasn't her usual lively self and looked downcast. Han Ruoro blinked at Shu Yan and, by telepathy, told him she planned to stay with Wu Ming tonight and wouldn't be coming over to chat. Shu Yan nodded, said nothing, and headed back to his home. He sat on the soft sofa in the living room, cleared his mind, and closed his eyes to rest. Once his thoughts were empty and calm, he took from his storage spirit tool a strangely shaped crystal, the gift Han Ruoro had given him when she returned home at 6. At the time, it had been carefully examined at Shrek Academy, and their appraisal matched the one given later by Shu Yan's family elders. The contents came from a dark attribute giant dragon of an extremely high bloodline rank and terrifying power in life. Research had shown that the rock-like outer shell wasn't true stone at all, but a crystal formed when the dragon's energy leaked out and solidified under special conditions. Its hardness was astonishing. Shu Hong, Shu Yan's grandfather and former clan chief of the Shu family, now a top commander in the dueling military and a rank 95 super Douluo, could not break it. In the end, he had to slowly decompose it by warming and dissolving it with spirit power. It took 5 full years to decompose nearly 40% of the opaque outer shell. Only the tip of the treasure inside was revealed, but even that sight shook Shu Hong, who had seen 1,000 battles. Dragon Crystal. The word alone was enough. It was one of the legendary ancient treasures, comparable to immortal herbs, a condensed remnant of a dragon's essence after death. This was a complete dragon crystal, formed from the condensed essence of a dark attribute giant dragon whose bloodline rank was at least equivalent to a light holy dragon. Its preciousness was beyond words. For Shu Yan, the treasure was even more significant. He himself had a dark attribute, true dragon spirit. Shu Hong and Shu Junyu both insisted that if Shu Yan could one day fully refine and absorb the dragon crystal, he could reach the domain of Limit Douluo, perhaps even advance further. But the crystal's power was so monstrous and its outer shell so energy-repellent that even now, after Shu Yan had broken through to become a spirit ancestor, he could only draw some of its energy through long, strenuous meditation to aid his cultivation. The origin energy and the bloodline power buried deep inside remained completely out of reach. That night, an endless stream of energy flowed into Shu Yan. His limbs and bones, bathed and purified by the power, grew denser and more crystalline, giving off a faint jade glow. Years of steady refinement had already pushed his physical strength close to that of a typical attack system spirit emperor. Now his bones and meridians became tougher, raising his capacity to absorb spirit ring energy. Coupled with his long practice of special methods to cyclically temper his mental force, his mind became extraordinarily active and strong. All in all, he had no glaring weaknesses, almost a perfect hexagonal warrior. Under starlight, the night passed. At breakfast the next morning, Wu Ming was much brighter. The three of them chatted and laughed. The atmosphere was light. They didn't head to their spirit suit simulation training grounds afterward, though. Instead, they flew straight toward the outer district. A few days earlier, Hanroro had learned through her channels that a top-tier, very high-spec auction would be held in Shrek City. She had notified the organizers in advance and planned to take Shu Yan and Wu Ming along, partly for the excitement, partly to see if anything valuable might turn up. Once they left Shrek Academy, their flying shifted to walking, and Hanroro led them toward Shrek City's central area. The streets grew busier, crowds streamed about. The wide avenue was lined with exquisitely decorated shops of every imaginable kind, even establishments resembling the footbath districts Shu Yan remembered from his previous life. Billboards showed scantily clad women and bold slogans, evocative of the old world's nightlife, though during the day most shops stayed empty. Through the tall, dark red glass, he could sometimes glimpse the colorful interiors. Shu Yan only glanced once. The decor had simply triggered a flash of memory. In his past life, he'd once been like some pampered young master of high society, eating, drinking, and pursuing women. The difference was that under the influence of his elders, his conscience had not been entirely corrupted. He hadn't committed truly harmful acts. Still, the change he'd undergone since transmigrating to the Douluo Continent had been profound and painful. After arriving here, Shu Yan had felt his soul shifting, gradually integrating into this world's origin. At first, he'd considered himself an outsider, holding on to memories from his previous life. But as his soul was accepted by this world, he began to see himself as truly of the Douluo Continent. Those past life memories became innate advantages and foresight, rather than his whole identity. He learned a clear lesson. Transmigration was not some easy, novel-like escape. The old life was gone. Only by fully embedding his soul in this world could he be a complete person here, capable of making the judgments and taking the actions needed to survive and advance among spirit masters. The land's law was simple: survival of the fittest. The weak adapt passively, the strong shape their environment to suit their will. Everyone must choose whether to be weak or strong, but choice alone doesn't guarantee outcome. Since arriving in this world, Shu Yan's aim had been simple and absolute: to change the course of the world's operation by becoming overwhelmingly strong. Strong enough to exist forever here, strong enough to keep the people and things he cared about safe, strong enough to build a new world of his own design. That was his true purpose. Chapter 28, The Joint Auction House and the Auction, Hanruoro's Threat. They threaded through crowded streets until they stopped in front of a magnificent building in the center of Shrek City. Situated at the junction of the three kingdoms of the original continent, Shrek City had long been the continent's most important commercial hub. Its superior public order also made it the preferred place for cross-border trade, so land in the central district was extraordinarily valuable. For an auction house to occupy such a large parcel of land here, the power backing it had to be considerable. In fact, almost every major commercial power on the continent owned landmark properties in Shrek City: shopping streets, assembly halls, even auction houses. These institutions didn't just generate enormous profits for their patrons, they ran vast intelligence networks too, watching events across the continent and funneling information back to their sponsors. Money and information combined made them irresistible to any ambitious force. The three of them entered the first-floor lobby side by side. As the soundproofing spirit device behind them took effect, the city's noise vanished and the space fell into a hushed stillness, as if they had stepped into another world. The lobby looked almost entirely carved from transparent crystal. A faint, crisp fragrance drifted from many large, oddly shaped potted plants. The plants and the lobby's unique design left a dazzling impression. They walked on a smooth stone floor amid lavish decorations. Even the chandeliers overhead seemed sculpted from gemstones, casting soft, dazzling light. Uniformed attendants bowed politely as they passed. One stepped forward to inspect the invitation in Hanroro's hand, and then led them toward the center of the lobby. Shu Yan noticed there were no insignia of any particular faction on the attendants or on the building itself. Wu Ming, who, like Hanroro, rarely left the inner courtyard, knew the big auction houses of Shrek City well. Yet she had never seen or even heard of this place. It was a surprise. Sensing their curiosity, Hanroro explained softly as the soul guidance lift rose. This is a joint auction house built and managed by several leading commercial powers on the continent. It doesn't belong to any single force. The joint auctions they hold are the most prestigious of their kind across the continent, she went on. They're held only once every 3 years. The minimum starting bid for anything put on that stage is over 5 million gold coins. The range of items is enormous: spirit bones, spirit beasts, spirit tools, medicinal pills, rare herbs, and every kind of treasure you can imagine. The scale and standards rival the national-level auctions of the 3 great empires. She gestured toward another lift rising nearby. As the 3 glanced over, an old man looked at them briefly. After confirming they weren't a threat, he smiled and turned away. See? Everyone here is extraordinary, leaders and high-ranking figures of various forces. There are plenty of spirit master powerhouses circulating among the bidders. She added, and we're not coming as individuals or as students of the inner courtyard. We're attending as heirs of our families. As heirs, we qualify. As inner courtyard students, we wouldn't. Wu Ming's face lit with surprise. An auction inner courtyard students can't enter? That actually sounds pretty exciting. Within Shrek City and the 3 Kingdoms, being an inner courtyard student carried special privileges. City lords, officials, and nobles treated such students with respect. Those accepted into the inner courtyard were usually outstanding and backed by influential families. Shu Yan's interest was piqued. He'd only planned to accompany them for a change of pace, but a high-level auction like this might yield something useful. With a crisp chime, the lift stopped. The door opened, and the attendant guided them down a bright, spacious corridor to private room number 6. The waitress pushed the door open with a practiced smile, and they stepped inside. A smaller yet equally dazzling crystal chandelier hung over the room, finer and more intricate than the one in the lobby. The private room matched the lobby's clear crystal aesthetic, but the light was softer, and silver filigree traced the walls with a slightly futuristic feel. The mix of ancient luxury and modern design gave the room a truly refined atmosphere. Shu Yan and Han Roro took seats while Wu Ming lingered, looking around. She reached out and patted the plush white sofa with a grin. "An ice swan cub," she said, nodding toward a small spirit beast decoration. "I remember that species was almost extinct not long ago. Yi Liu told me about them." Han Roro signaled the attendant away with a wave, then picked up a glass of juice and took a sip. "That Ye Liu?" she said casually. "Stay away from him, Minger. He's all charm on the surface, but really a philanderer." Wu Ming's eyes widened. "Really? I'd heard rumors." "He got involved with the tofu shop owner by the alley outside our academy last month," Han Roro continued. "Outer courtyard students saw them leaving hotels together. Ye Liu even provided money so the owner's son could attend a regular Spirit Master Academy." Wu Ming clicked her tongue in surprise. "That tofu owner must be nearly 50, right? Her son around 14 or 15? Yi Liu, he'll go for anything, huh?" Shu Yan listened to the girl's gossip and couldn't help the corner of his mouth twitching. Inwardly, he gave a mental thumbs up to Ye Liu's audacity. Han Roro noticed Shu Yan's expression. She set down her crystal cup, as if remembering something, and looked at him with a teasing seriousness. Yan, don't be like that, Ye Liu, fickle and two-faced. If you dare to act like him, I, your older sister, will punish you like I used to when you were a kid." Shu Yan's heart skipped a beat, though he kept his voice even. "Ruo Jie, I'm not that kind of person." Han Roro's gaze seemed to pierce right through him. After a long, searching look, she smiled and softened her tone. "Don't lie to your older sister. Be good, and don't let your eyes wander on the street either, or I'll be displeased." Shu Yan froze. He'd only glanced for a moment. Was a sister's intuition really that sharp? He found himself at a loss, thinking quietly that he truly had only glanced casually. Chapter 29, Mother-like Girlfriend, and the Discussion of Spirit Tools. After that little interlude, Han Roro's mood seemed to lift considerably. But Wu Ming didn't notice one thing. Han Roro's sharp, possessive gaze remained fixed on Shu Yan. His younger brother had learned to sneak glances at the courtesans on the street. Even that casual glance was enough to sour Han Roro's mood. The surge of emotions she'd been keeping in check was beginning to bubble up again. She wanted to scold Shu Yan the way she used to, but he was no longer a child easy to boss around. Han Ruoro felt rueful at that fact. Shu Yan felt oddly unsettled. This was the first time he directly felt Han Ruoro's possessiveness. Their relationship was still in transition, but she was already sliding into the role of his girlfriend. Only, not an ordinary one. She was the sort of girlfriend Shu Yan from his previous life would have called mother-like. In short, Han Ruoro treated a romantic relationship like a dutiful mother. Meticulous care, constant concern, and selfless devotion, all focused on looking after Shu Yan. He had seen hints of this before. She had always been gentle and attentive to him since they were children. Compared to his somewhat neglectful birth mother, Yu Bingyan, Han Ruoro felt more like a true parent. Those were the advantages. But as they say, nobody is perfect. With all those pros came cons. First, nagging. Han Ruoro hadn't shown it too much yet, but it would only get worse. Second, an overwhelming need to control and possess. Today it had taken the form of a harsh warning for a single glance. This was even before their relationship was officially acknowledged. If they did become an official couple, would she tie him up, drag him home, lecture him until he agreed never to look at other women again? Would her jealousy turn into something more extreme, something that crossed into restricting his freedom? If that happened, it wouldn't be mere possessiveness anymore. Of course, there were no relevant laws on Douluo Continent. In any case, Han Ruoro's tendency to control would only strengthen over time, potentially becoming full-blown yandere behavior. Shu Yan mentally decided he did not want the usually gentle, sensible Han Ruoro to become unhinged. Just as he was considering how to lead her back from that edge, the huge crystal wall in front of them began to change. A soft halo appeared. Then the wall transformed into a giant light-conducting screen, clearly displaying the scene beyond. On the other side was an auction stage about 3 meters across, finely decorated though not large. The auctioneer wore a luxurious red dress with light gauze. Her fair skin had a hint of blush, and her graceful smile felt warm and bright. The soul-guiding device transmitted the image with such clarity they could even see the golden patterns on her gown, except for a slight, unmistakable difference from the actual scene. Han Ruoro watched and sighed, a trace of melancholy in her voice. This light-conducting screen, and even the core formation behind it, are advanced technologies from the Sun-Moon Empire. A few years ago, our Han family tried to reverse-engineer the tech, but we discovered that the precision and sophistication of their core formation is beyond anything in the 3 kingdoms of the original continent. That shows how advanced the Sun-Moon Empire's soul-guiding device tech really is. Compared to them, we're in a different world. What's more, this is just civilian tech. Think about how terrifying the spirit tools used by the Sun-Moon Empire's military must be. Wu Ming still sounded casual. Ro, don't overthink it. No matter how advanced their soul-guiding devices are, their top spirit masters are far inferior to ours and to the academies. In the end, spirit masters are the foundation of everything. Han Ruoro shook her head slowly. You can't say that, Minger. This is a gap between technology and ideology, a choice forced on us by the times. I have a feeling soul-guiding device technology will rewrite human history and push humanity into a whole new era. Wu Ming's nonchalance fell away. She frowned. But aren't spirit tools and soul-guiding devices ultimately based on spirit masters? Shouldn't our battles be pure? Abilities cultivated by oneself are the most dependable. Spirit tools are, after all, external. As Wu Ming spoke, Shu Yan, unusually serious, interjected. Senior sister, spirit tools and soul-guiding devices are products of historical evolution. Those who refuse to move with the times will be left behind. Many high-ranking officials in the Academy and other powers in the 3 kingdoms think like you do, but if you always cling to that view, the times will run over you. As far as I know, the Sun-Moon Empire's soul-guiding device tech is at least 1,000 years ahead of ours. They've already developed large-scale linked spirit tools that can threaten the lives of Limit Douluo. Imagine if they get another 100 or another 1,000 years of advances. If their tech leaps to another level, it won't be a question of whether we can resist them. It will be about how to integrate with them. When he finished, the private room fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. Han Ruoro and Wu Ming stared at Shu Yan, stunned. They wanted to question him, but his serious expression quelled their words. After a long moment, Hanroro finally broke the heavy silence. Yan, I don't know where you learned this, but you must never speak of it casually outside, she warned. Minger, you too. Think carefully on your way home. Blindly opposing spirit tools isn't wise, and don't go blabbing what Yan said today. Understood? Wu Ming came back to herself and studied Shu Yan with a deep look, then nodded earnestly. Don't worry, Ruo. I may seem careless sometimes, but I can weigh things. Shu Yan's my closest male friend in the inner courtyard. I wouldn't betray him. Chapter 30. Opening and the Level 7 Disintegration Cannon. As the golden light on the spirit tool screen slowly faded, a melodious voice rang out. Welcome, honored guests, to the Shrek City Joint Auction. I am Qing Yu, the auctioneer for this event. I will now introduce today's 12 auction items. Auctioneer Qing Yu performed a graceful, composed bow, an etiquette typical of the Three Kingdoms on the original continent. She turned slightly and pressed a silver button. The auction stage beneath her gave a crisp click and began to rise. The crystal walls around the stage retracted, and 12 golden orbs, each glowing, floated up and circled. The first orb descended onto a silver display stand. When its halo dissipated, the item inside was revealed, a grayish-white spirit bone, ethereal and cloud-like under the soft lighting. From its shape, it was clearly a right leg bone. Esteemed guests, this spirit bone is called the cloud-chasing, moon-pursuing right leg bone, auctioneer Qing Yu announced. It comes from a wind-eroding mist bird with a cultivation of more than 40,000 years. The bone itself is over 80% complete. After multiple appraisals by our experts, its spirit ability has been confirmed. Stealth combined with short-range extreme acceleration, capable of instantly boosting speed by over 200%. The spirit tool screen split into two panes, one showing the spirit bone, the other displaying full information. After a few moments, Qing Yu continued quietly. Viewing time for the cloud-chasing, moon-pursuing right leg bone is 5 minutes. The starting bid is 5,200,000 gold coins, and each bid must increase by at least 50,000 gold coins. This viewing period allows buyers to inspect the spirit bone and gives those who are uncertain time to confer. We trust our attendees are experienced, so Qing Yu will not waste time with unnecessary talk. After viewing, you may bid freely. If no new bid is placed within 1 minute, the item is sold. The successful lot will be delivered directly to your private room by our staff. Payment may be settled after the auction concludes. Wu Ming watched the bone with a mix of shock and regret. A 40,000-year spirit bone, and it's only the first lot. What a pity. If it suited me, I'd try to get it. She had only one left leg bone herself. Her family had paid dearly for it. Finding a spirit bone of the right age and compatibility was extraordinarily difficult. Han Ruoruo glanced away from the display and explained mildly, the joint auction house isn't called that only because many forces built and run it together. It's the largest underground commercial and intelligence hub in all of Shrek City. It connects countless factions and has the fastest supply and the most channels for news. Unless a treasure appears only once in thousands of years, the auction house will find it and bring it here, provided you can afford the price. Her tone shifted. The joint auction is their main external brand. If they don't present high-face items, they'd have wasted their effort putting on the auction. Wu Ming listened, puzzled but silent. Shu Yan remained impassive, watching the numbers on the spirit tool screen without comment. The first item sold for 6,100,000 gold coins. The next 3 lots were also spirit bones, a right leg bone, a right arm bone, and a torso bone. All 3 were top tier for their types, but none were compatible with the trio. The 5th lot finally drew their attention. 7 objects appeared on the stand, 7 cannon shells, each shining with a silvery metallic luster. They lay silent, but the air around them rippled. The spatial attribute in them created subtle undulations. Shu Yan recognized the aura, spatial fluctuation. Level 5 fixed-load spirit tool cannon shells, 7 of them, Hanruo said, surprised. All have rare spatial attribute cores, and strangely, none are standard models. If I'm not mistaken, they're from Mingde Hall. Each has the same spatial core spirit formation, but with different secondary effects. Hanruo knew spirit tools well. The Han family had long been involved in their development and trade, and as the most promising candidate to lead the family, she was familiar with Mingde Hall's output. Mingde Hall had never produced fixed-load shells above level 5 that were available in the Three Kingdoms. Level 5 was already the top fixed-load shell one could obtain from Mingde Hall here. "It's rare," Shu Yan said softly, "but 7 level 5 shells alone shouldn't be enough to justify the high starting bid for this auction. Even 10 more of these wouldn't reach a 5 million starting price." Before he finished, auctioneer Qingyu's pleasant voice chimed again. "Esteemed guests, you may wonder why level 5 fixed-load shells appear at an auction of this caliber. Those 7 spatial attribute level 5 cannon shells are actually complimentary, small gifts included with the successful bid on this 5th item. Now, please admire the spirit tool itself, the level 7 disintegration cannon." The spirit tool screen flickered. The 7 shells vanished. In their place stood a single, unfamiliar weapon, a specially crafted spirit tool cannon over 2.5 meters long. Its overall form resembled a spear. Near the front, it flared into a spearhead-like umbrella shape, then tapered into a cold, shimmering shaft. The section designed for shouldering or holding was slightly thicker, balanced to be carried like a spear. If not for the dense spirit cannon power radiating from its length, one might have mistaken it for a peculiar spirit spear. Chapter 31, The Sacred Unicorn Torso Bone. Decomposition Cannon. What on earth is that? Wu Ming asked, frowning. As a pure spirit master, she knew nothing about spirit tools and had no idea what a decomposition cannon could be. Han Ruoro's red lips parted slightly. She took a moment to compose herself, then explained softly. A decomposition cannon is a single-target offensive spirit tool. Its principle uses spatial attributes. By splitting space, it produces a devastating force far greater than that of ordinary spirit cannons of the same rank. Spirit tools are graded from 1 to 9. The higher the level, the more functions and power it has, and the harder it is to make. A decomposition cannon is at least level 6, meaning only materials and techniques for level 6 or higher can support its inherent might. It's also one of the hardest spirit tools to manufacture in levels 6 through 9. That difficulty is why it's such a powerful single-target weapon. On our original continent Three Kingdoms, the highest decomposition cannon anyone's ever seen is level 8. A level 9 decomposition cannon is a secret weapon even the Sun Moon Empire treats as its trump card. That gives you an idea of how destructive they are. Shu Yan rose slowly and walked to the spirit tool display. His fingertips traced the image of a level 7 decomposition cannon on the screen. With his back to the two women, they couldn't read his expression. Wu Ming's voice, laced with curiosity, cut through the hum of the room. "A Yan, interested in that decomposition cannon?" Han Ruoro moved to his side and laid a hand lightly on his back. Shu Yan's brows tightened as he looked at the cannon's faint cold glow on the screen. "I am," he admitted. "A level 7 decomposition cannon is rare and terrifyingly potent. Even some titled Douluo would find themselves in trouble. If the timing's right, it could severely injure or even kill a titled Douluo. It generates its destructive force by spatial fission. That's oddly fitting for me." Han Ruoro chuckled, unsurprised. "If you want it, bid. If you can't afford it, ask Ruo Jie. I won't say much, but I do have a few million gold coins." Shu Yan smiled wryly. "For this much, there's no need to bother Ruo Jie. Don't worry, I carry plenty of gold when I go out." Wu Ming rolled her eyes inwardly. Her Wu family was not wealthy, and their Golden Crow spirit had been a fortunate mutation. Listening to the pair in front of her, treating millions of gold like pocket change, she silently wished she could take some off their hands. The starting bid for the level 7 decomposition cannon was 5 million gold coins. As the first item in the spirit tool section, its auction price far exceeded manufacturing cost. The item was simply that rare. Decomposition cannons at level 7 and above appeared only once in many decades. This particular cannon was even more unusual. The soul guide who crafted it had adjusted its structure so it could function both as a conventional spirit cannon and as a decomposition cannon. That kind of dual design in a single core formation testifies to great talent. Level 7 tools also demand much from their user, and in the original Continent Three Kingdoms, many practitioners harbored reservations about using spirit tools, so bidding was limited. In the end, Shu Yan secured it for 5,700,000 gold coins. Auctioneer Qingyu brought down the hammer. Within 2 minutes, the Level 7 Decomposition Cannon and 7 Level 5 Fixed-Load Spatial Attribute Spirit Tool shells were delivered to Private Room 6. After Shu Yan confirmed everything was in order, he stored them away in his storage spirit tool. Even disregarding the cannon, the 7 Level 5 shells were a major asset. Used correctly, they could be employed to severely injure or kill a spirit Douluo. Shu Yan didn't intend to learn manufacturing, but he had no aversion to using spirit tools. They were the product of the age's development. As a prophet, he couldn't pretend the world hadn't moved forward. The joint auction had a peculiar format. The first 4 items had been spirit bones. Items 5 through 7 were spirit tools or rare materials for crafting them. Besides Shu Yan's purchase, the other 2 were scarce materials smuggled out of the Sun Moon Empire by special channels, hence their exorbitant prices. The 8th and 9th items were rare medicinal herbs, suitable for earth and fire attribute spirit masters. Han Ruoro won the fire herb and handed it to Wu Ming. Wu Ming was at 67 spirit power. After refining that herb, she should break through to 68 within 2 weeks, and in about half a year could reach Spirit Saint. Having long grown accustomed to Han Ruoro's generosity, Wu Ming offered little in the way of thanks. Their relationship had passed the need for words. They were sisters in heart, and good turns would be repaid in time. The remaining 3 items were also spirit bones, but their quality and age far surpassed the first 4. The 10th and 11th items sold for 9 million and 11 million gold coins respectively. Finally, the last lot, the Yato piece, was brought out and placed on the cold metal display stand. The instant the torso-shaped spirit bone appeared on the screen, a soft golden halo flooded the display. Without touching it, a sense of sanctity and holy light overwhelmed the 3. In a hazy vision, the silhouette of an odd spirit beast formed from the bone, pure white with a faint golden glow and a single horn on its head. It condensed, then scattered into countless shimmering particles. Shu Yan's breath caught. He sat up straight, astonished. This is the sacred unicorn. Han Ruoruo and Wu Ming's eyes widened. Their breaths quickened as well. In Douluo history, unicorn spirits had indeed appeared on rare occasions. Their bloodline was powerful. The strongest among them could rival pure-blooded dragons. The sacred unicorn was the apex of the unicorn tribes, a legendary being comparable to the sacred dragon, an embodiment of holy light and a scourge to evil spirit beasts. The sacred unicorn's nature made it anathema to malign forces. Under the golden halo, Qingyu's features seemed to take on a solemn, almost sacred bearing. She turned slightly, presenting the magnificent spirit bone like a masterpiece to all present. Then, in a quiet voice that carried through the hall, she began to speak, each word heavy with reverence and meaning. Chapter 32. Doubts about the spirit bone and Shu Yan's bloodline. Honored guests, this is the finale item of our joint auction. It's a torso spirit bone from the legendary super spirit beast, the sacred unicorn. After appraisal by countless experts and powerhouses at the auction house, this spirit bone is nearly perfectly intact and at least 90,000 years old. It is an extraordinarily rare artifact in the whole spirit bone world. From every angle, this spirit bone can be called a city-overturning treasure. It's the most precious spirit bone to appear at our joint auction in nearly 1,000 years, unrivaled, unprecedented. Auctioneer Qingyu's voice held a hint of excitement. She had only recently been appointed chief auctioneer of the joint auction house. Her first auction featuring such a priceless item could secure her a hefty bonus and firmly establish her position for years to come. After a long pause in the private room, Han Ruoro finally spoke, surprised. I never expected a spirit beast like the sacred unicorn to still exist. I always thought it was only in the records. While Han Ruoro and Wu Ming reacted with astonishment, Shu Yan's eyes swept inch by inch across the white spirit bone, which gave off a faint golden glow. A moment later, as if sensing something amiss, he frowned slightly. This isn't right. The light aura from this spirit bone is too strong. The sacred unicorn does have some light power, but its fundamental attribute is sacred, The sacred aura should dominate. Here, the sacred and light auras are almost balanced. That makes no sense. There's something wrong with the spirit bone itself. At Shu Yan's words, Han Roro stepped forward to the soul-guiding device screen and studied it more closely. The soul-guiding device, specially made in the Sun Moon Empire, could transmit high-definition images in real time. Its unique core array, combined with a rare ore, could also convey a faint trace of the other side's aura. The transmission was unstable, but a perceptive spirit master could still read some things from it. After the initial surprise faded, Han Roro spotted the anomaly too. Indeed, the light aura is far too strong, she said. A sacred attributed spirit bone shouldn't show such a strong light aura. Sacred and light might share origins, but they're different attributes. With sacred dominant, it should contain the light within it, not be evenly matched. This is strange. Yan, what should we do? Han Roro's gaze went distant for a moment. Never mind that for now. Whatever the bone really is, or whatever's behind this discrepancy, now isn't the time to analyze it. Let's bid on it first so we have room to maneuver later. Shu Yan's tone was firm. He didn't need the spirit bone himself, but Yu Bingyan, who was far away in Lingdo City, would be perfect for it. Both sacred and light attributes were strengths of the angel martial soul, and as far as Shu Yan knew, Yu Bingyan had not yet undergone a torso-bone fusion. This torso bone seemed tailor-made for her. All Shu Yan had to do was secure it. If Yu Bingyan fused with it, her cultivation path would be much smoother, and breaking through to titled Douluo would become far easier. Then let's bid, Shu Yan decided. After the auction, I'll ask the auction house to tell us whether this spirit bone is from their own collection or being auctioned on behalf of another power. We can negotiate afterward. Han Roro understood Shu Yan's motives and wholeheartedly supported him. Yu Bingyan was Shu Yan's mother. If Shu Yan hoped to truly be with her in the future, her approval would matter. Given the good relationship between their families and Yu Bingyan's past kindness to Han Roro was happy to help. Wu Ming listened in bewilderment. When the auction officially began, she tugged on Han Roro's sleeve and whispered, "Roro Jie, why does Shu Yan care so much about this bone? He knows there are doubts about it, yet he still insists on bidding." Han Roro looked at the soul-guiding screen, where the numbers ticked up every few seconds, and smiled. She leaned in and murmured, "Yan's mother comes from the angel family and has a pure angel martial soul. This spirit bone suits her perfectly. Now that he's found it, as her son, he can't let it go." "What?" Wu Ming's eyes widened. She stared at Shu Yan's back in disbelief. No wonder. I wondered why he had such good innate talent. So it comes from his parents' side. Han Roro chuckled and shook her head. There's more. Yan also carries the dueling imperial bloodline. His grandmother was the eldest child of the previous dueling emperor and is the elder sister of the current emperor. That makes the current dueling emperor Yan's father's biological maternal uncle. Yan should call him granduncle. Wu Ming was stunned yet again. She stayed silent long enough for Han Roro to lightly cough and snap her back. Han Roro pinched Wu Ming's cheek without saying more. They both turned their attention to the soul-guiding screen. The bid had climbed to 13.2 million gold coins. Given normal auction multipliers, the final price should be around 20 million gold coins, Han Roro analyzed quietly. Any higher, and it exceeds what nearly 99% of powers can afford. Unless a major power has someone inside who truly needs this bone, they won't push it much further. Han Roro's prediction proved accurate. As the bidding approached 21 million, the pace slowed. No one pushed it higher as the auction neared its end. In the final moment, Shu Yan placed one last bid, 100,000 gold coins more. Auctioneer Qing Yu's delicate hand trembled slightly as the hammer fell. The crisp sound echoed through the room, and for a moment, everyone felt their hearts drop, as if a mountain of gold had passed before their eyes and vanished. 21,700,000 gold coins, an astonishing sum, enough to buy a small city, perhaps two. Wu Ming stared at the number as if it might crush her. After a long moment she managed, "Rich, amazing." Chapter 33. Shu Yan's bargaining. Staring at the long string of numbers, Shu Yan felt a strange tug in his chest. For a spirit master, Parting with gold was easier than most would imagine, but this spirit bone carried too many question marks. Bargaining should be possible. The real question was how much he could shave off. Hanroro watched Shu Yan frown thoughtfully and couldn't resist teasing him. Regretting it now, young Master Shu? That price is over 20 million gold. Say something nice, and I, Ruoro, will help you out. Shu Yan forced a smile. I don't think this spirit bone is worth over 20 million. They've handed me the handle themselves. Ruoro, do you think I should keep saving them face? Hanroro only laughed and shook her head. I already sent for the auction house manager. He should be here shortly. No sooner had she spoken than there was a light knock at the private room door. Hanroro blinked in surprise, then grinned. See? The joint auction house is always efficient. They came quickly. Wu Ming went to open the door. Two middle-aged men entered, the lead man in a pale robe with an amiable, refined air and the bearing of someone accustomed to standing above others. The man behind him was similar but older, probably over 50. The leader bowed slightly. Miss Han, hello. I am Pei Jingde, manager of the auction house. The other man cupped his hands in greeting. Miss Han, I'm Ning Lecheng. That final lot was provided by our 9 treasure glazed tile school. You mentioned a problem with that spirit bone. Could you be specific? Hanroro invited them to sit and then explained plainly. The sacred unicorn is one of the few super spirit beasts with a sacred attribute. It controls 3 forces, sacred, light, and flame, but the sacred attribute is its core and the strongest. The bone itself is fine in quality. The issue is the distribution of attributes. When your appraisers evaluated it, didn't they notice the sacred and light attributes were almost equal? If the bone truly came from a top-tier sacred unicorn, its sacred attribute should dominate the light. That's basic. Don't you agree? Pei Jingde and Ning Lecheng exchanged worried looks. Pei Jingde frowned. I had a strange feeling when I first saw it, but our checks showed nothing. Hearing this from Miss Han makes things clearer. He turned to Ning Lecheng. What do you think? Ning Lecheng hesitated, then sighed. Miss Han, I don't have a full explanation. Sacred unicorns are more legend than report. There are no verified sightings for ages. When our school first obtained the bone, we tested its residual chi and attributes. Later, we captured a 1,000-year horned-scaled horse from the Star to Great Forest. It had an ancestral bloodline and the potential to revert toward a unicorn. Using it as a test subject, we concluded the bone came from a unicorn with an extremely powerful bloodline. And by its attributes, we believed it to be a sacred unicorn. Shu Yan smiled thinly. So your 9 treasure glazed tile school is putting up for auction a spirit bone that wasn't fully verified? If this gets out, it won't be good for the schools or the auction house's reputation. For institutions like the 9 treasure glazed tile school and the joint auction house, reputation, profit, and connections were everything. Lose credibility and you'd lose the most powerful tool in business. Ning Lecheng's face tightened. After a moment, he defended himself. Young master, how can you say that? Our school has traded across the continent for 10,000 years. We've never deceived customers. I can vouch for that. Shu Yan only chuckled. This kind of oversight has happened, Mr. Ning. I'm not paying over 20 million gold for a spirit bone whose origin and hidden risks are unclear. Are you saying your appraisers and the auction house were less professional than their reputation? He piled the pressure on, leaving the implication that if things went public, their credibility would be damaged. Ning Lecheng's hands balled into fists, his expression darkened. After a long silence, he finally raised his head. Then, young master, what would satisfy you? We can discuss anything. If this was our oversight, Shu Yan cut in without preamble. We will take the spirit bone. But given your negligence, forget 20 million. My offer, 5 million gold coins, and include the level 7 disintegration cannon I bought earlier. Then this matter is closed. Pei Jingde and Ning Lecheng froze. Even Wu Ming, who had been watching quietly, nearly choked on her surprise. Pei Jingde's mouth opened and closed, Ning Lecheng's face drained of color. Shu Yan tapped the armrest of the sofa with a cool, repetitive sound. Each tap felt like a mental blow. The young man's composure carried an unexpected chill. For a moment, everyone felt an oppressive weight and a hint of something sharper beneath it. Ning Lecheng's clenched fist slowly relaxed. His face twitched, then he asked in a low voice, "Young master, are you, like Miss Han, a student of the Shrek inner courtyard?" Shu Yan let out a soft laugh. "Yes, I'm Shu Yan. Perhaps you've heard of me?" Ningla Cheng's expression shifted as if remembering something. He forced a smile, awkward and strained. "So you're of the Shu family. No wonder." "This was our error," Ningla Cheng admitted finally. "Very well. Since it has come to this, we'll accept young Master Shu's terms. But I ask that young Master Shu and Mrs. keep this matter completely confidential." Pei Jingde, unsettled by Ningla Cheng's sudden capitulation, rose as well. "The joint auction house concurs. For today, please, keep it absolutely between us." Shu Yan and Han Ruoro exchanged a quick look. They were curious about the sudden willingness to negotiate, but seeing no need to press, they let it go. Smiles flickered at the corners of their mouths. "Then I look forward to a pleasant cooperation," Shu Yan said softly, "and I hope our next transaction will be just as satisfactory." Chapter 34, Sea God Pavilion and Spatial Displacement. After paying a whopping 5 million gold coins, Shu Yan left the joint auction house with the level 7 disintegration cannon and the 90,000-year holy light torso bone, while Ning and Pei watched with tearful faces. A short distance away, Wu Ming could no longer hide her astonishment. She hurried up, breathing fast, and said, "Shu Yan, you're incredible. 2 auction items for 5 million gold. Those people really lost big. They practically handed you the goods." Han Roro chuckled, then added, "It's not a Yan being ruthless. It's them being overconfident and sloppy. They practically gave us a handle. If they don't take the hit, who will?" Shu Yan smiled faintly. "They simply count on their reputation. That's their basic strategy." If another faction realized the problem only after bidding on this spirit bone, by then the 9 treasure glazed tile school would never admit it. Even if it got exposed, they'd spin it, accuse the challengers of tampering with the bone to slander them. With the 9 treasure school's millennia of prestige, public opinion would instantly side with them. The issue itself wasn't that serious. The moment I brought up their reputation, they panicked. At first, I only wanted to haggle, because the spirit bone was practically flawless, except for some attribute quirks. But they insisted on making it look grave and even put themselves at a disadvantage, so we could propose conditions to fix it. In that situation, of course, I could squeeze more benefits for ourselves without feeling guilty. Besides, he added lower, Mr. Ning from the 9 treasure glazed tile school reacted oddly when he learned who I was. Wu Ming didn't analyze further. She gave him a thumbs up and clicked her tongue in admiration. "Not bad, not bad. You're as clever as Ruo Ruo when she pranks people. You two really are a perfect match." Han Ruoro playfully pinched Wu Ming. Wu Ming pretended to be annoyed and pinched her back in turn. Shu Yan watched the two of them teasing each other, setting aside the thoughts in his head. He couldn't help the slight smile tugging at his lips. He was clearly in a good mood. That evening, Shu Yan returned alone to Shrek City. In a shop that sold spirit-guiding devices, he handed the Holy Light torso bone to Gu Yun, who had been staying in Shrek City, and asked her to take the spirit bone back to Lingdo City in secret. After learning the details, Gu Yun immediately summoned her shadow guards and set off. Shu Yan watched them fade into the distance, then returned alone to the inner courtyard. The next few days were as ordinary and monotonous as usual. After Yu Bingyan received the spirit bone from Gu Yun and understood the situation, she wrote a letter overnight and sent it to Shrek City. The letter contained a few admonishing words about his recklessness, but it was mild, no severe scolding. She told him to study hard at Shrek Academy and reassured him that if anything went wrong, they would take responsibility and handle it, so he shouldn't overthink it. Shu Yan tucked the letter into his spirit storage device and didn't reply. Instead, he decided to use his free time to visit the Sea God Pavilion and ask Team Douluo about some persistent questions he had about the spatial domain. After telling Han Ruoro, Shu Yan unfurled his dragon wings and flew toward the center of Sea God Island. Passing through a veil of mist, he finally glimpsed the golden tree and the Sea God Pavilion in full. The tree's canopy was vast, almost blotting out the sky, but the space beneath felt bright and warm rather than cold and damp. Some of the plants were thousands of years old. Exotic flowers bloomed in profusion. The air carried a gentle holy light life chi. He didn't like holy light chi. Even his dragon crystal, kept in the deepest part of his spirit storage device, trembled slightly, reacting to the mutual generation and restraint between attributes. This place clearly wasn't suited to dark attribute spirit masters for long. Shu Yan folded his wings and landed, then followed the bluestone path to the Sea God Pavilion carved into the tree trunk. Sea God Island had many magnificent buildings, but none as awe-inspiring as the Sea God Pavilion. Its above-ground structure rose only 3 stories, but each floor was over 10 meters tall. The whole edifice looked ancient and solemn. A black plaque over the first-floor entrance bore 3 gilded characters, Sea God Pavilion. Even a quick glance inspired solemnity. As Shu Yan prepared to step forward, an abrupt, overwhelming sense of danger struck him. In an instant, he felt his blood chill and his limbs go numb. A silver light flashed across him. The space around him warped strangely. Moments later, a disheveled old man in a gray-brown robe appeared where Shu Yan had just been standing. A cold halberd rested on the old man's shoulder. The black shaft was engraved with patterns that glowed with a low, dark light, and beneath that shimmer there was a faint surge of dragon might. At the same time, Shu Yan realized he was clutching a long, black halberd. His hand trembled and his spirit power felt suppressed, as if some vicious beast had targeted him. For a stunned beat, he could only stare at the weapon in his grasp. Then the old man burst into loud, surprised laughter, as if delighted. Ignoring the halberd on his own shoulder, he strode forward and said with admiration, "What a spatial displacement! Even this old man didn't react fast enough. Little fellow, you're impressive, far stronger than your grandfather or your father." Shu Yan slowly withdrew the black halberd, then cupped his hands in respect. "Greetings, Elder Xuan." Xuanzi waved a grimy hand, reached for the wine gourd at his waist, and took a long swallow. The smell of strong liquor washed over them. Shu Yan's expression stayed calm, but the corner of his mouth twitched faintly. Xuanzi wiped his mouth casually on his sleeve. His crimson eyes flashed with a sharp light as he squinted at Shu Yan. "I don't know how you recognized me," Xuanzi said, voice rough, "so tell the truth. Are you a mutated spirit, or do you contain twin spirits?" "Okay, it's almost Tuesday again. Please follow, vote monthly, bookmark, tip, and recommend." Chapter 35, A Conversation with Xuanzi. Xuanzi spoke while his gaze stayed fixed on Shu Yan. His cultivation had reached 98. At his level, even a casual release of his pressure was enough to suppress a spirit master of Shu Yan's rank. But Shu Yan's physical and mental strength was unusually robust. Under Xuanzi's pressure, he felt only a slight weight on his body, nowhere near the chill that had washed over him the first time Xuanzi locked onto him. "Senior Xuan, I only have one spirit, the Han family's inherited spirit, Yazi. During its awakening, it underwent a beneficial mutation and gained a spatial attribute," Shu Yan said. He released his spirit and spirit rings. 4 rings, 2 purple and 2 black, radiated a heavy, oppressive aura. Darkness spread behind Shu Yan, and a pair of blood-red eyes slowly opened, revealing a massive, agile, and sinuous form. 5 years had passed, and the dragon scales that had attached to Shu Yan's skin after spirit possession were no longer purely black. Over time, they had shifted to a silver-black blend, the reserve of black tempered by the flash of silver, with a faint metallic sheen that gave the beast a refined, advanced look. Xuanzi studied the silver-black phantom beast, which exuded a biting, killing intent, then smiled knowingly. "So that's it. A top-grade mutated spirit with spatial attributes. You've been blessed by opportunity, young man." He reached out with a large, greasy hand and gave Shu Yan a heavy pat on the shoulder. "Withdraw your spirit and spirit rings. Since you recognized me at a glance earlier, your father and grandfather must have told you a lot about me. Tell me, what else do you know?" Shu Yan drew back his spirit and rings and cast a discreet glance at the Sea God Pavilion, which looked like an ordinary wooden building from the outside. What before answering? "I know what I should, everything I ought to know, including the existence of Old Mu." Xuanzi chuckled, unsurprised. He waved Shu Yan to follow and stepped directly into the Sea God Pavilion. Shu Yan trailed behind, taking in his surroundings. Thinking about it, this was his first time inside the pavilion. He'd been too occupied with cultivation and recent breakthroughs, and with a few small assessments to complete after entering the inner courtyard, he hadn't yet visited Xixing. A warm, profound aura of light enveloped them as they entered. Even though Shu Yan was a dark attribute spirit master, he felt his body lighten at the first contact with the light aura. But that benefit was limited. As he stayed, the dense light aura began to react with the equally dense dark attribute spirit power in his body, producing a sense of repulsion. Shu Yan frowned and used spatial force to form an invisible membrane over his skin. The membrane blocked the erosive effect of the light while permitting the life aura to enter, allowing him to absorb nourishment without harm. Xuanzi noticed, but said nothing. The pavilion's light aura worked wonders for nearly 95% of spirit masters, but it wasn't friendly to dark attribute or evil soul masters. Someone like Shu Yan, however, who could find a way to break the contradiction himself, was an exception. After all, the life aura and origin chi in the Sea God Pavilion were also dense and universally beneficial. Everything inside the pavilion was ancient. The furniture and decoration were built from the golden tree removed when the pavilion was excavated. Shu Yan sat when Xuanzi motioned, and a warm sensation spread from the chair into his body. Even the tea leaves were made from dried golden tree leaves. Steeped, they softened into a brew thick with life aura. "Try it," Xuanzi said. "The light aura in this tea is faint. It's mostly life aura. Drinking more of it is extremely beneficial to a spirit master's body." He settled into a chair opposite Shu Yan, relaxed and almost ordinary in posture. Shu Yan sipped the faintly fragrant tea. "It's excellent. Thank you for your hospitality, Senior Xuan." Xuanzi waved a hand impatiently. He produced a chicken drumstick from somewhere, bit into it, and mumbled, "Don't bother with formalities. Our academy doesn't do that. Respect the strong, sure, but spare me the extra etiquette. I find it annoying." Shu Yan chuckled and nodded in agreement. "You know a lot, young man. Don't tell outsiders about these things, especially about old Mu. Guard that secret well, even from the girl in the Han family," Xuanzi warned. "By the way, you came here to find that kid Xixing, right?" "He already let me know, but he isn't a super Douluo yet, so he can't officially be an elder of the Sea God Pavilion. Otherwise, he could live here instead of running around." In short order, Xuanzi had eaten the drumstick to the bone. A faint, earthy yellow glow then flared in his palm. When it did, the chicken bone turned to dust and blew away. Xuanzi casually wiped his hand on his robe and looked at Shu Yan. "You said you have questions about applying spatial force that you wanted Senior Xixing to answer?" Shu Yan stated his purpose honestly. "Yes, a few questions about spatial force." "Spatial force, huh?" Xuanzi's expression darkened, as if lost in thought. Then he recovered quickly. "Your control and application of spatial force are excellent. I could see it in how you escaped me and turned the situation around earlier. Even if I wasn't at full strength, that was impressive. In terms of spatial force, you're a genius, no doubt about it. Your comprehension is deep and unique. That's a blessing, because when your cultivation reaches title Douluo, or even my current realm, a spirit master who naturally possesses such comprehension and control over spatial force will find it far easier to step up to a new level than others of the same rank. That's certain. But when you used that spirit ability just now, I detected something special, another power woven into it. If I'm not mistaken, it was time. Shu Yan, I'm sure you felt it yourself, haven't you?" Shu Yan met Xuanzi's eager gaze and slowly nodded. Xuanzi's smile deepened. His crimson eyes shone with a rare intensity, as if he had just discovered a precious treasure. Chapter 36. The Power of Time. Time and space have always been the highest attributes. Especially time, the power it grants is the most wondrous and unique. From ancient days to the present, very few spirit masters have truly mastered it. In the whole of Shrek Academy, the only spirit master who had truly mastered both attributes at once was Douluo Xixing. Xuanzi had already noticed many surprises in Shu Yan. He had watched most of Shu Yan's recent matches in the Dohun district, always remaining hidden in the shadows and never showing his face. Even when Shu Yan's fourth spirit ring ruptured space and nearly annihilated the district, Xuanzi had remained still and observed, because he had sensed Xixing's arrival. It was in that collision that he had detected a trace of an unusual power within Shu Yan's spirit ability, the power of time. Shu Yan paused and then asked quietly, Elder Xuan, I don't really understand why I can control a trace of time's power. The last time Senior Xixing acted, I did feel some resonance with his spirit power. Xuanzi frowned slightly, then relaxed. I once heard an elder at the academy say that space and time are closely related and coexist. Without space, the world would be an endless void, and time would have no meaning in that void. The higher a spirit's innate quality, the more attributes it tends to possess. I've investigated your spirit before. Between the two attributes your spirit contains, space is stronger than darkness. That means the space attribute dominates your spirit power. When your mental force is strong enough, your comprehension and control of space will deepen. In that case, there's a very slim possibility that a link to time could emerge from the power of space. He let the idea hang in the air, his gaze fixed on Shu Yan. Shu Yan thought about Xuanzi's words for a long moment, then asked, Elder Xuan means that if my mental force grows and my grasp of space reaches a certain peak, I might be able to extract an understanding of time from space and eventually control it? Xuanzi gave him an exasperated look. That's the most likely explanation for your situation. It's actually simple to test. You cultivate, and you interact with Xixing often. Push your comprehension and control of space as high as you can, and don't let your mental force lag behind. Then you'll know. If your control over time improves as your space control improves, our guess was right. Shu Yan nodded without changing his expression and said respectfully, Thank you for your guidance, Elder Xuan. I understand. Xuanzi glanced toward the Sea God Pavilion entrance, snorted lightly, and continued, That kid Xixing is here. Go find him. If you have more questions, ask him. His understanding in this field is good, and he's capable of teaching you now. If Xixing can't solve a cultivation problem for you, come to the Sea God Pavilion and find this old man. Out of respect for your grandfather and father, I'll answer 1 or 2 questions. Shu Yan smiled wryly, thanked him again, and walked out of the pavilion. He met Team Douluo Xixing at the door. When Xixing saw him and then noticed a fleeting brown figure in the distance, he had a rough idea what had transpired. He patted Shu Yan on the shoulder. Elder Xuan is an eccentric, but from our last talk, he thinks highly of you. Shu Yan nodded. Regardless of Xuanzi's oddities, their conversation had shown genuine goodwill. The elder's words had also given Shu Yan some direction. As long as he didn't follow Xuanzi on spirit hunts, there would likely be no trouble. Seeing Shu Yan's thoughtful face, Xixing said nothing more. He merely touched Shu Yan's shoulder gently. In the next instant, a flash of silver light, and they were gone, reappearing by Sea God Lake. When I didn't see you come to find me the other day, I thought you might have forgotten. But now your spirit power has broken through another level. You haven't wasted the past month, have you? Xixing looked out over the lake and chuckled. You flatter me, Senior. It's my honor that you took the time to guide me. Shu Yan's expression returned to focus as he took in their surroundings. They stood on the western bank of Sea God Lake, an undeveloped, seldom-visited stretch, quiet and broad, perfect for meditation and insight. Xixing turned to him. You don't have to call me Senior in private. Call me Uncle Shi. Your father and I were classmates. We were close. Uncle Shi. Shu Yan didn't object. He had suspected a connection between Xixing and his father. Yu Bingyan's letter had confirmed it. It was only natural to address a close classmate of his father as uncle. All right, Xixing said, adopting a more serious tone. Let's not waste time. Ask whatever you want. If I know it, I'll tell you. Shu Yan didn't hold back. He laid out all the doubts and puzzles in his mind. The more Xixing listened, the more surprised he became. But those surprises turned quickly into pleasant relief. He answered Shu Yan's questions systematically and at key moments demonstrated techniques directly. Good teachers and helpful friends are invaluable. Under Xixing's patient, detailed guidance, Shu Yan steadily absorbed the lessons. The thin fog that had clouded his thinking began to dissolve, and clarity came like the parting of clouds to reveal clear sky. Xixing's instruction continued for nearly 4 hours until the light finally faded. When he stood to leave, Shu Yan remained seated cross-legged on a large rock by the lake, allowing the day's insights to sink in before opening his eyes. He watched the sun drop behind the horizon and exhaled slowly, letting his thoughts settle into calm. Silence wrapped the place, broken only by the distant chirp of insects. Shu Yan lay back on the rock, watching the stars emerge and the cool moonlight fall over the land. The night mist rolled in, bringing a chill that finally pulled him from that state of complete mental emptiness, when his soul had seemed to drift freely between heaven and earth. He smiled softly at the surrounding mist. Then a silver light flashed across his body, and he vanished from the spot. Chapter 37. Senior Sister's Dinner. New Student Assessment. Another month flew by. This evening, Shu Yan lounged on the sofa, watching several graceful figures bustling about in the living room and kitchen. He hadn't expected to be included in a gathering of the inner courtyard's most senior and powerful female students, but it was amusing to see the usually formidable senior sisters teasing one another so playfully. The kitchen door opened, and Zhang Swan, one of the inner courtyard's senior sisters, stepped out carrying a plate of washed fruit. She glanced at Shu Yan on the sofa and scolded with mock exasperation. "Shu Yan, are you planning to sit there until dinner's ready?" Hua Yao, the lotus fairy, was setting the table nearby. She chuckled and added, "Everyone else is busy. Only Shu Yan has been slacking off. If you keep this up, your senior sisters might throw you out." Shu Yan spread his hands and replied helplessly, Senior Sister Hua Yao, I really want to help, but honestly, there's nothing I can do. If it's that important, I can go to Sea God Lake right now and catch some fish for the soup." Zhang Swan rolled her eyes, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and pointed toward the kitchen. "Go help Ruo wash the vegetables. Don't tell me you can't even do that much." Reluctantly, Shu Yan got up and pushed open the kitchen door. Han Ruo was methodically preparing a slab of century-aged, silver-patterned venison. She smiled when she saw him and said, "See, you didn't want to help, and now Le Xuan and Sister Yao have complained about you. Since you're here, come watch the fire for the soup." Shu Yan rubbed his temples and nodded. Even counting his 2 lives, he'd been in a kitchen no more than 10 times. He found this far harder than winning 10 consecutive matches in the Duhun district. If he messed up, 3 pairs of sharp tongues would descend on him, and he'd have no way to argue back. These 4 leading students of the inner courtyard often gathered to cook and eat together. In the past, their get-togethers had always been at Han Ruoro's home, but this year, with Shu Yan in residence, the others felt it would be rude to exclude him. Despite his protests, Wu Ming and the warm-hearted Hua Yao had dragged him in, partly because they didn't want him worrying alone. The venue naturally shifted to Shu Yan's room. It was larger, better equipped, and the women all liked his decor. After more than half an hour of bustling about, a dust-coated Wu Ming stormed in from Shrek City. The sky outside was fully dark. Fog hid moonlight and stars. Inside, however, the soft glow of soul-guiding lamps made everything cozy and warm. The 4 women took their places at the table while Han Ruoro brought the last dish in and sat down. Wu Ming, who hadn't been able to wait, immediately grabbed a piece of steaming rice cake. "The spirit corn from the Star Luo Empire is still as sweet and fragrant as ever," she said through a mouthful. "Several of the senior cooks in our inner courtyard cafeteria are from Star Luo. After eating their food for so long, it's hard to go back and eat home cooking." Han Ruoro scoffed and teased, "With so many dishes, can you ever shut your mouth? Aren't you afraid of choking yourself?" Zhang Lexuan and Hua Yao laughed. Shu Yan kept his head down and ate quietly, finding it hard to join the senior sister's conversation. Hua Yao seemed to notice. Her serene eyes blinked. She looked over at Shu Yan and said, "By the way, Shu Yan, hasn't it been almost 3 months since you joined the inner courtyard?" Shu Yan blinked, then nodded. "It'll be 3 months in a few days. Why, senior sister Hua Yao? Is there something?" Hua Yao rested her chin on her hand, a small smile in her eyes. "It's nothing bad. It's just that you're about to have something. Didn't Ruo and the others tell you? The inner courtyard has a new student assessment system, similar to the outer courtyards. New students have to complete a new student assessment during their 3rd month here. It's effectively your first monitoring mission in the inner courtyard, and it's important." Shu Yan's smile faded. Zhang Lexuan and Han Ruoro exchanged embarrassed looks. This was an oversight on Ruo's and my part, Zhang Lexuan admitted softly. But for Shu Yan, the inner courtyard's new student assessment isn't that hard. If he's careful and prudent, the chances of an accident are low. She met Shu Yan's eyes and continued, monitoring missions are different from the elimination system in the outer courtyard, but they force you to face the harshest, most real side of this world. For various reasons, the first mission assigned to new students is usually not too difficult. Those who enter the inner courtyard are already geniuses among geniuses. Aside from a small number who will be overwhelmed and fall away, most won't suffer major accidents. But you need to be prepared, Wu Ming said seriously, setting down her chopsticks. After this first monitoring mission, the difficulty of subsequent missions rises. Those are true life-or-death tasks if you're not careful. Though Han Ruoro said nothing, worry shone in her autumn water eyes. She had walked this path herself and knew what the inner courtyard demanded. The minimum requirement of 30 monitoring missions has cost countless seniors their lives since ancient times. Some were direct descendants of powerful families, some were peerless geniuses whose light once burned brightly. Sensing the mood darken, Zhang Lexuan tapped the table to lighten things and said softly, "Don't overthink it. You all know how strong Shu Yan is in combat. With his mysterious spatial ability, I couldn't take him down easily. There's no reason to worry unnecessarily. We should have confidence in our junior." Shu Yan chuckled. "That's right, senior sisters. Trust me in battle. Just don't trust me in the kitchen. Don't call me in here to cook again. If anyone gets a stomachache after eating, I won't take responsibility." The four women laughed, and the somber mood dissolved into warmth. They toasted each other, and time slipped by in the easy, comfortable glow of the evening. Chapter 38. Assessment. Annihilate the Iron Fire Ant Colony. Senior Sisters Massage. The days after the dinner party were quiet. 3 months had already passed since Shu Yan had entered the inner courtyard, though he had no real sense of the time. In that span, he had adapted to inner courtyard life and organized his days meticulously. He spent most of his time in the Dohun district and the mimic cultivation grounds, and in sparring had already defeated nearly 80% of the inner courtyard students, including Chen Zifeng and even Shi Shi, who were members of the current generation's official Shrek Seven Devils. In a few days, the inner courtyard would hold a Seven Devils contest. Any spirit master of the right age could challenge the official Seven Devils of their faction, and if they won, they would claim the title. But that was for later. As Hua Yao had said, Shu Yan's first official freshman assessment in the inner courtyard was approaching. At noon one day, Shu Yan was meditating cross-legged in the living room. He heard a door open. A familiar aura reached him. He didn't open his eyes at once, but continued to regulate his breathing for a while before slowly opening them to find Han Ruo seated opposite him with a smile. He chuckled softly. "Ruo Jie, are you here for something?" Han Ruo shot him a playful glare. "Do I have to be on official business to come see you?" Shu Yan rose and poured her a glass of juice. She sipped it and then produced a delicate ring from somewhere, handing it to him. "What's this?" he asked, though he had an inkling. Han Ruo looked at the tiny, emerald-green gem set in the silver band. "This is the Shrek Overseer ring. Only inner courtyard students have them. A Yan, prick your finger and let a drop of blood touch it. It will bind to your bloodline. Through that bond, we can tell if someone is actually wearing their Overseer ring, and it's also a storage spirit tool. It contains the standard equipment for an Overseer: cloaks, masks, signal flares, you know what it's for." Shu Yan turned the ring over, noting the monstrous, adorable Shrek emblem and the fine craftsmanship. It was a specialized soul-guiding device. "Do you know what my assessment mission is, Ruo Jie?" Han Ruo's expression sobered. She produced another piece of paper stamped with the Shrek totem and handed it to him. "A colony of iron fire ants has appeared in the Blood Soul mountain range, 500 kilometers west of Heaven Do City. They feed on living flesh and are spreading rapidly. Their queen has around 3,000 years of cultivation. Because of their expansion, the nearby forest has been stripped of life, and they now seriously threaten people in nearby villages. The assessor must annihilate the colony and return with the Ant Queen's body within 7 days. If you exceed the deadline, the mission will be considered a failure. Shu Yan picked out the key facts from the report and looked at Han Ruoruo. When does the assessment start? Han Ruoruo bit her lower lip and whispered, Dawn tomorrow. You'll need to make all preparations today. Otherwise, travel will eat up too much of your time. Shu Yan nodded and stored the intelligence in his spirit tool. Ironfire ants aren't individually strong compared to something like the 1,000 Jin ants, but their numbers are terrifying, and they can control fire. Where they go, there's a high risk of wildfires and ecological devastation. That's why other spirit beasts and human spirit masters tend to wipe them out as soon as they show up. Han Ruoruo outlined their strengths and weaknesses while Shu Yan listened. She worried despite knowing his power. Academy rules required assessments to be completed alone without a Dao protector, or she would have gone with him. Shu Yan wasn't perturbed. The ant swarm's danger was its overwhelming numbers, but he commanded several large-scale destructive spirit abilities. Group attacks were not his greatest concern. Seeing Han Ruoruo's brows knit with worry, Shu Yan sighed softly, stood, and sat beside her. He decided to try a measure he'd been meaning to test to calm her. When he casually lay his head in her lap, Han Ruoruo flushed and immediately placed her hands on his shoulders, though her grip was weak. Shu Yan lay down and closed his eyes. Han Ruoruo's hands froze where they were. She peered down into Shu Yan's dark, quiet eyes, and her breath became slightly uneven. What are you doing? You pervert? There's a sofa. Why are you lying on my lap? Her voice trembled between reproach and something softer. Shu Yan shifted to make himself more comfortable and murmured, It's not the first time, Ruoruo-ji. Help me rub my head. I've been busy sorting out my insights and feel a bit tense. Han Ruoruo swallowed. The spot he'd nudged had warmed, and the heat seemed to spread. Her face reddened. Even the delicate rims of her ears went pink. She scolded him lightly, but there was no real resistance. Maybe she had let him get used to this closeness, she thought, and that made her soften. Her hands moved to Shu Yan's head and began to massage a few acupoints known to soothe nerves. In the instant her attention wavered, a faint smile curved Shu Yan's lips. He rolled slightly and settled more fully into her embrace. Han Ruoruo's cheeks deepened in color. The day was warm. Her thin clothes did little to hide the warmth of his breath against her skin. A slow, unfamiliar stirring passed through her, chipping away at her composure until a fine gooseflesh dotted her arms. Shu Yan, eyes closed, felt only the comfort of the moment and didn't notice the soft tenderness gathering in Han Ruoruo's gaze, an affection like clear autumn water watching over him. Chapter 39. Departure to Tianhun. The next day, the mist in the forest still hung heavy, and the pitch-black sky had only just begun to pale. Under the watchful eyes of Han Ruoruo and Wu Ming, Shu Yan slowly rose on his dragon wings, then condensed into a silver-black streak of light and shot toward the distant horizon. Wu Ming clung to Han Ruoruo's arm. After watching him go, she tried to comfort her friend softly. It's fine, Ruoruo-ji. Don't worry so much. Any decent inner courtyard student goes through something like this. You've been tense since last night. How about this? Let's call senior sister and the others out for a walk today to clear your head. A faint golden light flickered in Han Ruoruo's beautiful eyes. She turned her head slightly, gave Wu Ming a sideways look, and murmured, It's not as bad as you think. If you go out to play every day, how are you ever going to break through to Spirit Saint? Today you and I are staying put, only the simulated cultivation ground. In the afternoon you'll train with me again. More grinding will do you good. Ah! Wu Ming's face fell instantly. Her hands tightened around Han Ruoruo's arm as she pleaded. Ruoruo-ji, you don't have to be like this, do you? Shu Yan's gone. Don't take it out on me. I'm your friend. Han Ruoruo ignored the plea, said simply, no discussion, and went back to her room, leaving Wu Ming standing under the trees, staring at the sky in despair. She almost wished she could have gone with Shu Yan on the inspection mission. By evening, Shu Yan, following the map's directions, arrived at a small town near the Blood Spirit Mountains. He had flown fast and used spirit power to accelerate where necessary, arriving just before dark. He touched down in the shade of a tree outside the town and walked down the road toward the gate, taking in the surroundings. The town was called Stone City. As the name implied, Its walls, inner roads, and many houses were all built of stone. It looked ancient and backward. No solar-powered spirit-guiding streetlights that had become commonplace elsewhere. No modern conveniences, more like a city from 10,000 years ago. Shu Yan found what seemed to be the largest inn and planned to rest up before dealing with the iron fire ants in earnest the next day. He slept well. Clouds and mist drifted over the distant ranges. It was a rainy day. A steady curtain of rain shrouded the land. Shu Yan walked out of the inn, held his hand up to catch raindrops, and smiled. Iron fire ants were fire-attributed spirit beasts. The heavy water element in the air would naturally weaken them. Luck, perhaps. He left the town and flew northwest for about half an hour until he saw a small village tucked into the mountains. From above, it wasn't large, mostly low wooden or stone houses. Only the village center looked lively. The rest was quiet and ordinary. Fields of crops surrounded the hamlet, and the life chi in the mountain valley was strong. Shu Yan didn't bother with the bamboo hat and mask the Shrek Academy inspectors sometimes used. In such a poor, ordinary village, he stood out immediately. A braver villager, after asking his purpose, escorted him to the village chief. The chief was an old man, his chi and blood nearly dried up, a weak, declining figure whose remaining lifespan was obvious. Yet his eyes were still bright and sharp. Seeing Shu Yan, the old man was slightly surprised. He hadn't expected the academy inspector to be so young. "This old man, Gu Hongjun, greets Inspector Master," he said, bowing with the villagers clustered behind him. In this world, a spirit master's status still far surpassed ordinary people, and that hierarchy remained unshakable even after 10,000 years. Shu Yan let the old man's salute pass and, after a moment, asked quietly, "Elder Gu, were you a soldier when you were young?" Gu Hongjun's expression changed. He cupped his hands respectfully. "Indeed, this old man served in the Tianhun Eastern Legion when I was young. How did the Inspector Master know?" "In your bearing," Shu Yan said lightly. "Just a casual observation." He then asked what he'd come for. "Elder Gu, do you know approximately where this group of iron fire ants is? If so, it would save me the trouble of searching bit by bit." Gu Hongjun studied him a moment before answering. "Inspector Master, that ant colony has been very active lately. There weren't any powerful spirit beasts near us before. This colony only appeared in the last 2 years. A few months back, a passing spirit master reported the colony. If anyone here knows where to find them, it's Liu, our hunter. He ran into a group of iron fire ants while hunting, barely escaped with his life, and lost an arm." He looked toward the edge of the gathered crowd. The villagers split apart to reveal a man missing an arm. "Liu Wei, come tell the Inspector Master exactly which forest they appeared in," Gu Hongjun called softly. Liu Wei trembled under Shu Yan's gaze. After a long silence, he mumbled, Inspector Master, I saw a group of dark red ants in the forest across the small river. One of them bit my arm off. If I hadn't crossed the river in time, I don't want to think what would have happened." Shu Yan nodded. With a general direction in hand, he didn't need to ask more. He had already noticed how few young faces remained in the village. Most were middle-aged or elderly. Before Shu Yan left, Gu Hongjun hesitated, then said quietly, "Inspector Master, please don't blame Liu Wei too much. Since that day, he's been haunted by those beasts. His mind isn't steady. He won't go into the mountains anymore, and his family, they don't look after him." "Sigh." Shu Yan paused, then waved a hand dismissively. Fear of death was rooted deep in people. In this world, who could truly be without fear? He turned and made his way toward the river and the mountains beyond, ready to begin the inspection. Chapter 40, Slaying the Ant Queen and the Crimson Spirit. Warm Jade. After leaving the village, Shu Yan flew in the direction Liu Wei had pointed out. When he passed the not-so-small river, he studied the forest along the bank and quickly found clear signs of ant activity. He couldn't help but sigh. If the river hadn't been there to protect the village, the iron fire ants would have slaughtered everyone long ago. Iron fire ants are spirit beasts composed entirely of fire attribute energy. They usually need to cultivate for 1,000 years to grow wings, and before that, they're reluctant to cross water. Rainy weather keeps them huddled in their nests. They only venture out when they have to. A river could only delay the threat for so long. If Shu Yan had arrived any later, After the other spirit beasts in the forest were hunted to extinction and the ants had no food, the village would still have been doomed. Following Liu Wei's direction, Shu Yan flew deeper along a stream, carving through a canyon. The terrain flattened ahead, and the once lush trees grew twisted and dead, blackened by burn marks. Iron fire ants left nothing green in their wake. Their passage turned fertile land into wasteland, leaving other spirit beasts with little choice but to band together against them. The deeper he went, the stronger the smell of scorched vegetation became. The forest had been reduced to charcoal, with faint embers still smoldering. Hovering about 10 meters above the ground, Shu Yan scanned the ruins. Beneath the fallen trees, his mental senses detected countless dark red ants swarming. Most only hundreds of years old, though a leading one nearly a foot long gave off an aura of having just broken through the 1,000-year rank. Not far ahead, a huge cave mouth yawned on the hillside. Scores of iron fire ants poured from it, a dark red torrent that made the air ripple. He didn't waste time. 4 spirit rings rose slowly around him. The fourth, a 10,000-year spirit ring, cast an eerie black light. A crisp crack echoed from the cave mouth, and then black holes opened everywhere. The suction was terrifying, something even those 100-year and 1,000-year ants couldn't resist. They screamed as they were drawn in and reduced to dust. Shu Yan had been practicing and refining his control over his 4th spirit ability, Space-Time Shatter. His command of it had become far more precise and effortless. Though the black holes multiplied, they only formed where ant density was highest. After devouring that portion of the swarm, each hole healed and dissipated without further collateral damage. His dragon wings beat once. He watched the slaughter with an unruffled expression. Space-Time Shatter was the most destructive area of effect spirit ability he possessed. Its power could not be judged by ordinary 10,000-year standards. Against dense swarms like these, it was nearly unstoppable. The suction alone could pull in an ordinary spirit ancestor. The slaughter lasted roughly the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. As the final black hole faded, Shu Yan descended gently, finishing off a few exhausted ants with casual motions before stepping into the cave. A brilliant silver light streamed from him, forming a long rainbow that lit the tunnel. With his hand clenched, the remaining ants that hadn't been consumed by the black holes were crushed into pulp by spatial force. An invisible membrane of spatial energy now protected him. Any ant trying to get close had its head severed by the barrier. Even he had to admit, the Iron Fire Ant Swarm's individual combat ability was unimpressive, but their numbers were astoundingly vast. For an ordinary spirit ancestor, completing a task like this within 7 days would likely mean exhaustion to death. The thought crossed his mind. Was this lowest difficulty assessment really a death trap for others? Had the Academy's higher-ups tailored it specifically for him? Somewhere else, in an office on Sea God Island, Yan Xiaojie stood by a window. For some inexplicable reason, he felt as though someone was thinking of him. He glanced at the clear sky, dismissed the feeling, and a faint smile curved his mouth. Shu Yan pushed farther into the cave, down a long, twisting tunnel until the space suddenly widened into a peculiar, natural, immortal cave. The walls weren't ordinary rock. They had transformed into a mineral that gleamed like red crystal. Shu Yan slashed casually through the last 1,000-year ant in his path, and then in the center of the cavern, he spotted a giant white insect, the Iron Fire Ant Queen. Its aura was unmistakable. He didn't hesitate. One blow dispatched the queen. Her corpse vanished into his storage spirit tool. With the queen dead, his assessment task was essentially complete. He took a moment to study the cave bathed in fire attribute energy. Approaching one wall, his right hand shifted into a dragon claw. A cold light flashed, and a shard of ore fell into his palm. He ran his senses over it. Such pure fire attribute energy, he murmured. No wonder the queen had pushed her cultivation so high in so few years. She had been feeding on this ore. He tucked the ore into his storage tool and pressed his glabella with a mental nudge. His mental force radiated and mapped the surrounding 500 meters with perfect clarity. This ore only appears in a 100-meter radius. The energy reaction is strongest at the bottom. There must be something else down there. A silver blade of light condensed in his hand. He drove it into the ground. The earth cracked inch by inch, and then collapsed. Shu Yan spread his dragon wings and dropped through the opening, easing his fall until he reached the bottom. When the dust settled, a wave of heat hit him. Before him sat a massive block of red jade, its surface veined with faint golden patterns. The nearer he came, the hotter the air became, the more intense the supreme yang and rigid qi pressed against him. "This is Crimson Spirit Warm Jade?" Shu Yan's surprise was plain. Crimson Spirit Warm Jade is an extremely rare and stable fire attribute gem, scarcely seen on the market and usually owned only by top-tier powers. Even a small piece could stave off severe cold. The finest quality jades could continuously refine and nourish a wearer's spirit power, meridians, and bones. He knew it for two reasons. His mother, Yu Bingyan, wore a pendant made from Crimson Spirit Warm Jade, an heirloom of her family with great significance. And the Shrek Academy Treasure Pavilion also kept this jade for its highest-ranking VIPs. Shu Yan didn't bother to hide that he had inside his storage spirit tool a special one-time top-tier VIP card, which, of course, explained how he knew such details. A piece of Crimson Spirit Warm Jade this size was an unfathomable treasure. Its value could not be measured in mere gold coins. Shu Yan's fingers brushed the jade as he considered his options. He already had a plan.